welcome in Rogers Base.
Thank you for having me.
Man.
Appreciate it. I still think it was so funny when you were mentioning earlier, like, dude, I watched you and now it's surreal to do a video with you. I'm like,
Yeah.
What are you talking about, man? I'm happy to do a video with you. Thanks for having me.
This is great. So 11/25 just came out.
Yes.
And a lot of the things I want to ask you are just very casual things. You know, I want to just have fun, just talk about like the future One Piece. What are you expecting off this chapter and all that good stuff? And the first question I want to hit you with is, if you were a slave on one of the bridges, one of the Wolf bridges, which would it be on? Because I mean, hey.
Bourbon,
yeah, no,
for sure.
I was going to say bourbon sounds pretty good.
Bourbon boys all day, every night.
Yes.
I also just genuinely like, whenever I go out, I like getting bourbon drinks, like honey bourbon type thing. So I'm bourbon wolf all day, for sure.
No,
That's
same.
the big four.
Yeah, bourbon is like the best one, dude.
The best one, easy. To be fair, I would not want to be working on any of them. I feel like getting whipped by celestial dragons and being worked to death does not sound great. But yeah, if you had to have your choice and you get unlimited drinks on one of them, I feel like Bourbon Wolf would be your best bet.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things is that, like, once this bridge is complete, I bet there'll be like a little like mini slave party. So like, you know, like if you get brought in at the very end, that's like the best part, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
What do you think of all this stuff with the bridges too? Because I feel like that was actually one of the best reveals of the chapter, is that Tequila Wolf was not alone. And then I'm assuming there's a bridge for every one of the seas now. You've got East Blue, West Blue, South Blue, North Blue. And I'm assuming each sea sort of has its own corresponding bridge that kind of like interconnects to Marijoa. And that would be the way the Celestial Dragons would be able to like walk around the rest of the world after everything sinks. So I'm very curious what you think about that.
That's kind of what it feels like. It's funny because at first, you know, with Tequila Wolf, it felt like a important plot point beforehand, but Oda kind of like tossed it to the wayside a little bit. You know, we only visited it like once every like 10 years or something.
Right.
But now it's like, by the way, there's 3 more bridges, and it's like, wait, what the hell?
Yeah.
We don't even know what the
like,
first bridge
and out
did.
of nowhere. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was very, very wild to reveal that at the end of the chapter the way that they did. But I'm obviously excited about it.
Yeah.
And I'm happy that they did it with the Revolutionary Army as well, too. Because, again, that's like when we first found out about Tequila Wolf was when Robin went during the 3D2Y. So, yeah, super cool reveal.
Yeah, and the thing with the bridges is that, like, I don't know why, but I just keep on thinking about it. It's like, okay, it's a nice bridge, but are they really just going to walk that distance now? Because Celestial Dragons aren't known for walking. So it's like, are they going to have, like, slave transports? Do they have cars?
Yeah, they're riding
like,
on the back of the slaves,
on?
I think is what they're probably going to think of. Kind of like when you saw Charlos on the back of Kuma. I think it's probably something similar where they were going to ride all of them to go across the bridge. I'm just happy to see these Celestial Dragons finally getting what's coming to them. That was another thing about this chapter. Like, that Saturn death, bro, gotta be top 5 deaths in the entire series. That was so good. Oh my god, it satiated my bloodlust.
I remember hopping into this arc. I started out completely like on the opposite end with Saturn. I was like, oh, Saturn's gonna be like this monster. We're not gonna be able to beat him. He's gonna look so good, you know, because you know, with typical shonen, it's like, okay, the villains only get stronger and stronger. I was like, okay, Saturn's gonna be like insane. It's gonna be like Kaido 2.0, and then we come to find out that it's not the case whatsoever, and he's actually dead. It's like, okay, well, this is crazy.
It kind of lines up, though, with, I think, what a lot of us assumed for the Egghead incident, right? It's like the way that he was hyping this up, saying something major was going to happen. And then even recently, like 2 weeks ago, I don't know if that was like in an SBS or like one of the editor comments or something, they had mentioned that there was like one other big thing still left to happen on Egghead. Clearly, this chapter was right? It was the death of Saturn. And I feel like, even the reveal of like Saturn being responsible for the robot not being dismantled, right? And then like him eventually causing his own downfall with the hubris of the science division, I thought was great.
Oh, man.
It is weird, though, because I do see people talking about the Gorosei and the 5 Elders and like, man, you know, they seem weaker than I was expecting. I feel on the opposite end of the spectrum. I feel like because Imu was able to, you know, siphon away this power from Saturn, it really seemed like, wow, they've got to be weak. But in reality, like, the Elders escaped pretty much unharmed, all of them. At the end of Egghead Island. And Saturn probably would have as well if Imu didn't choose to rip that away from him. But now with like setting Garling in place and potentially like whether or not Garling is going to get Saturn's power or if he's going to have some type of new yokai ability, I'm stoked. I feel like the possibilities are kind of endless after this one.
So with Saturn, did you see, I'm assuming you did, the smiling faces that are like in the panel where like his soul is getting ripped out? What the hell is that?
I feel like, are you a big Disney fan? Do you like Disney? Okay, good. It's like, I took that as the poor unfortunate souls. I took that as like the friends on the other side from Princess and the Frog. Those type of like demonic creations that, because I feel like Imu after this chapter has got to have like the devil fruit, right? He has to have something related to like Satan or the devil, and then all the other ones around him, he's like granting the abilities. But it's obviously something to do with like demonic powers, and even something kind of like similar to the Leave Her Life thing, where you saw the souls being ripped out of people's bodies with Big Mom. I feel like it's probably the souls of the damned, right? The souls from hell screaming out and yanking his body and dragging it down with them. Like, I think it's cool. And obviously Disney's a big, Disney, what am I saying? Oda's a big Disney fan as well. So I kind of feel like there's a lot of things that are tied to sort of like Disney interpretations of hell and demons and things like that we see time and time again in One Piece, and that just is like another one along the side of it. Yeah.
I mean, there is like a Disney World in Japan, and I bet Oda goes there at least once or twice a year.
100% he's going to
that place
Tokyo
is so
Disney
nice.
Sea. Yeah, oh, it's amazing. Yeah.
But yeah, like when they rip that soul out, like these souls are smiling, and it's like, okay, like is it the Gyuki? Is it like some dead people like around Saturn? Is it Saturn's soul? Is it Imu smiling? Like I can't tell.
I do again wonder if it's like demons related to Imu. I think like that was the big thing in this chapter, was the way certain stuff was worded, especially in the official, where they talked about like the power being nebulous, right? That like it's just kind of vague. They don't really know like what to do. The power just gets taken away willy-nilly, apparently. And obviously it's Imu granting the power by also being able to take it away. So where is he drawing that power from? Again, like the first time that we see Imu's silhouette, and this is interesting with like the anime episode for this adaptation coming up, I think within the next like week or two, we just had Imu last night talk for the first time in the anime. And now next week is the big Sabo and Cobra, like Imu Gorosei confrontation.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we're going to get like a clearer image of that silhouette, because you very clearly see like the demon tail stabbing into Sabo and stabbing into Cobra during that chapter where you first see him for the first time. And I'm also wondering if like that has something to do with Imu's power itself, right? Because like in this chapter, you see that the Gorosei do in fact have basically internal life, right? They're all alive for 200 something years. You see Saturn looks exactly the same way in that flashback as he did in modern day. And so I'm wondering if that is something tied to Imu's power, and if that also connects with what we saw with Ivankov, where Ivankov was theorizing that Imu Neurona was granted the powers of the Op-Op fruit immortality surgery way back when. And my idea is like, basically, if you've got the literal devil fruit power, right, and you're able to grant demon powers to your subordinates, and then someone gives you the eternal life surgery, the rest of the world is cooked. You've created like the ultimate villain of One Piece, where the only weakness would be the sea.
Yeah, and I mean, with Imu as well, like, I mean, first up, he's on the red line, so if he has a devil fruit, he's never going to touch that water.
No, never.
Yeah,
never.
He's
in
good.
A million
He's
years.
good. But as far as Imu goes, like, 900 years, man, like, when we think about Luffy, right, time skip, 2 years, Luffy went from, like, moderately strong to insanely strong with Gear 4. If Imu's been training for 900 years, which I don't know if he has because he's, you know, in his posh position, but this guy should be a monster, 100%.
Yeah. And he clearly is, based on everything we've seen. Yeah.
It kind of feels like me and you are on the same boat, where we believe that Imu is like the devil fruit.
The devil, right, for sure.
Because like with that tail, like the first thing I thought of was just like a cartoon devil, you know, like the old school guy sitting on a throne. Like
110%,
the little, like,
the Cuphead devil.
Pitchfork.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Cuphead devil, yeah.
Yep,
and even the way like he not distorts his body, but like transforms and eats fire. Like it feels like, I played Cuphead, I love it. And like that's what the devil does in Cuphead. You know, he changes his body like every 2 seconds, and it's like there's no real, you know, limits to him. He's like Luffy in Gear 5th, but just, you know, obviously dark.
Yeah, the evil version, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So,
I do too.
As far as the Marines go, like, you know, Marines, World Government, they're two different factions. How do you feel about the Marines moving forward now that they've seen not just Saturn's death, but the fact that Saturn doesn't deny Vegapunk's message? Because that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, that moment where Doberman's like, wait, so what do you mean? You confirm like everything he said is true, and he just like offs Doberman so quickly.
God.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting, right? I like that Oda sort of played with the concept of like introducing this strong group of Marines only to like not really focus on them at all. I thought was actually smart, because I feel like so much of what I didn't like about Wano Country was introducing all of these factions, and then for them to be important, but also not important at the same time, right? Like getting all this build up with the Tobi Roppo, multiple versions of a lot of these fights, hyping up the numbers and then to do absolutely nothing. I feel like him introducing the Vice Admirals only for them to be humbled was a really great way to sort of like introduce all of these other named characters and these other people who should be monsters within the Marines that now like pale into comparison to everything that Saturn was doing and all these other creatures. So yeah, I do almost wonder if there is going to be a group of Marines who then maybe sort of move closer to the side of like the Fujitoras, the Kobes, the Smokers, who are more like, maybe this isn't the right way to go about things moving forward.
I don't think our boss likes us, guys.
No.
I don't know what it is. You know, are you a big Vice Admiral fan? Like when you saw these guys show up on Egghead Island, were you like celebrating and throwing your fist up?
No, I was like, bro, who's the dude with the triple chin? I don't care about him. I'm ready to die already. Yeah, I'm ready for him to die.
Oh, man.
Even
when
like
I saw
Dahl
these
and the
guys,
rest
I
of them.
loved them.
Yeah, I feel like some of the Vice Admirals had interesting, like, designs.
Yeah.
But I feel on the whole, and I'm sure you feel this too, like just after coming off of Wano Country, with the introduction of so many of these groups and spending so much time on characters that amounted to basically nothing, I was not looking forward to Egghead, which was, at this point, I felt like a really solid, probably one of the best post-time skip arcs of the story. I didn't want Egghead to be bogged down by sort of the same issues that Wano did. And so thankfully, again, like him not really spending time on them, introducing them and then showcasing them to be like, no, actually, these guys are relatively weak.
Yeah.
And they're here to show sort of like the level of the Marines, but then juxtaposed with the level of the Five Elders. I didn't have any problems with that at all. No.
Yeah, and then not to mention, it's like you said earlier, like these Marines, they could serve a purpose later on. Like they start airing towards the side of Fujitora and they can add to their numbers and it's great. Whereas, you know, to back up your point about Wano, because, you know, I don't know if people will agree with that, but to back you up on that, like Wano, we had the Scabbards. They're great. You know, like there's a lot of like Tobi Roppo, they're great. But go back and think about the Yakuza leaders. Can you name all four of them? Because I can't.
There were all the Yakuza leaders, all the Scabbards, all the Tobi Roppo, all of the numbers that were hyped up with those giant silhouettes were like, these guys are going to be important, literally amounted to nothing. You had all of the gifters as well, the Pleasures division. You had Kaido, you had Kaido's main I mean, there were
CP0.
Many people. Yeah, CP0 thrown in there as well, plus Marco, plus all the other people that came. I feel like, I don't know. To me, Wano felt very messy. And I feel like the highs of Wano were really high, right? Like Gear 5 was amazing. Some of those emotional moments in the Yamato flashback, but even like the way Yamato was handled, I feel like the whole arc to me wasn't necessarily a miss, but felt like a series of missed opportunities. And even like with, I've talked about this before in other videos too, and I don't want people getting angry at me, but I stand strongly by this. I feel like even some of the stuff with Yamato, of building up that character so much only for it to amount to be like, oh no, I'm actually staying behind and I'm gonna be Momo's mentor. It's like, well, you know what? Momo doesn't need a mentor. Momo still has Kinemon because Kinemon didn't die. Kinemon has been his mentor for literally 10 years of the story. For Kinemon to not die there, what's the point of you being the mentor to Momonosuke? It doesn't matter. Like, obviously, we're getting this stuff with the pilgrimage right now with Yamato and seeing Wano Country and the rebuilding of Oden. And I'm assuming that that's probably going to lead to, like, the discovery of old Wano Country and Pluton at the end of that whole story, which will be cool. But, like, bruh, it's just... for all the Yamato stuff to be built up to then amount to nothing was just like such a bummer to me.
So were you a Yamato for Nakama guy?
100%. Yeah. I mean, like,
me as well.
Okay,
and thank God.
It wasn't even like,
Man
I really wanted Yamato to join the Straw Hats. Like, I liked the idea of Yamato joining because I think thematically it worked well with like the stuff with the scribe idea, like the person on the crew that could actually like scribe out what's happening and like write the story of the Straw Hat. I thought that was cool. The mirroring of Oden, right? Saying you wanted to be just like Oden and then not doing what Oden did. It's like, okay, a little weird. All the flashback stuff that we spent with Yamato. I think the only thing sort of working against it was like on the power scaling side of like, but Yamato's got Conqueror's Haki and a super strong Devil Fruit. It's like, bro, who cares? Like, you've got so many strong people working with the Straw Hats that was never really something that bothered me. And like, I've been around this fandom for a long time, doing videos for like a decade. So like, I saw the Caesar Clown for Straw Hat debates. I saw the, the Carrot for Straw Hat debates. We've gone through this so many times at this point, and I feel like never in the history of me covering One Piece was it ever clearly telegraphed more by the editors, by Oda himself, by the writers, everything. Like, it was not more clearly telegraphed ever that someone was going to join the crew more than Yamato. Never. The fact that they released like this anniversary merchandise with all the Straw Hats and Yamato.
I remember that.
Ridiculous.
I saw that.
The fact that Yamato had the flashback, found out Luffy's dream with Ace, had that connection, has the dream to be like Oden, has the sad backstory, has everything lined up, the job on the crew, everything. For that to go literally nowhere is just such a big miss. And it's not even like me being salty about Yamato not joining. Because again, I've been here through thick and thin with the people not joining thing, with Carrot and with Caesar and with all these other characters. Like, that didn't bother me at all. It was that so much time was spent on this character to amount to literally nothing. And that is, I think, where my troubles come in with Wano. Not from Yamato not necessarily joining, because I do think we are looking at a situation similar to Jinbei, like where by the end, Yamato will show up with Pluton and the other scabbards, you know, during the final war or something. But I feel like at this point of the story, with how much you hyped up that character and how much time was spent on them in Wano, to them not be present during Egghead and not be present during all of this just seems kind of goofy to me. Yeah.
It feels like you've activated like a Winter Soldier, like, you know, name within me, because it's like I feel the exact same way with Yamato. Like I really thought she was gonna join, and I do think she might still join as well.
Yeah,
like maybe by the end of the cover page story, because like right now, you know, the latest development is that Minatomo went missing. Minatomo is known for building buildings and building ships.
Right.
So it's like maybe by the end of Yamato's journey, we find out that Minatomo was building her ship this entire time. Like Momonosuke like hired him to build the ship, and then boom, like by the end of it, Yamato can leave Wano finally. That's
on top
thinking,
of that too.
But,
No, but I don't think you're entirely off base, because there could also be something where like Minatomo potentially found out via Sukiyaki, who we now know is alive at the end of Wano, right?
Crazy.
Like Sukiyaki revealed old Wano country to Law and to Robin. So I'm assuming as the story goes on, more people within Wano are going to learn about old Wano country. And if Munatono's a carpenter, I'm sure he'd be interested in seeing how things were built in old Wano versus present Wano. So that could maybe be something that draws Yamato in towards old Wano.
And as far as Wano goes, since they do house an ancient weapon, and since Caribou's like, you know, on the run with Blackbeard, do you think Blackbeard's going to make an appearance soon here in Wano, or do you think Buggy will? Because Buggy does need the poneglyphs, and he knows that a poneglyph is here. Like, who do you think is going to be the first person that breaks the Wano metaphorical hymen? Sorry for lack of a better word.
No, but I totally get what you mean. It's tough, because I feel like Buggy, I have a whole theory that could go into, like, 3 videos that I'm not going to do right now about Buggy's role at the end of the story and like what role he's going to play at Laugh Tale specifically. But I think with Buggy, the Cross Guild right now with the stuff against the Marines feels to me more like an Impel Down breakout kind of group. Like I could almost see Buggy going either to Roadstar at the very end of the Grand Line and like finding out about the road poneglyphs. Obviously, he knows something from Shanks and from Roger's crew, but he doesn't know the full extent of it. And if he's fully going after the One Piece, I wouldn't be surprised to see Cross Guild like arrive at Roadstar Island, be like, oh, this is the first poneglyph you're supposed to discover, and like not... That basically being Oda's way of not having the Straw Hats get there, right? Because I feel very strongly we've got Elbaf arc, Final War arc, Laugh Tale, and then we're done with the series. I really think that's it. And I think anything else that we haven't seen that's like integral to the story or is going to be important is either going to be like shown in flashbacks, similar to more stuff with God Valley, or it's going to be shown via other major characters that will be important moving into the story later on. And I do feel like Roadstar is probably a prime location for either Blackbeard to go or for Buggy to go. And I think whichever other one doesn't go there probably ends up going to Wano Country, like you said. I think it's more likely that Blackbeard, at least in my opinion, is the one that goes to Wano Country because, again, Blackbeard, like you mentioned, has Caribou. Caribou knows the truth about all these ancient weapons. I feel like that would make a lot of sense for him to then go there. Also, like, knowing sort of how Blackbeard like manipulates these situations whenever these giant wars happen, where he scoops up all these devil fruit powers and gets all these other new combatants to be on his side. I feel like Wano is ripe for that, with maybe gifters or pleasures that are maybe downtrodden by seeing Kaido fall and want to join a new Yonko crew, potentially picking up new people over there. I don't really know, but I feel like of the two, Blackbeard seems more likely to actually go to Wano Country. Yeah.
All right, so Blackbeard comes to Wano. He runs into Momonosuke, the Scabbards, and Yamato. Is Blackbeard winning this battle?
Yes. handily.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to run into them, but I think if he runs into the Scabbards and Yamato, he handily defeats them. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Gura powers, man, like, if I was him, I would just stay off the coast, break the walls down, take what I want, get out of here, you know?
Exactly.
Like, he doesn't have to fight. Like you said,
Exactly.
like, dude, Van Augur is such a crazy addition to any crew. Like, being able to teleport in and out, insane. And
I think the other thing that people don't think about with Blackbeard's crew, too, that's still kind of up in the air, we don't know, like, exactly what happened to him, is Moria. Right? Like, Moria was captured by Blackbeard. Perona told Kobe, hey, we should help me break out Moria. Let's find Moria. We never got the resolution of that plot line.
Yeah.
I do think it's interesting that Blackbeard could potentially be going to a place that has the corpses of two of the strongest people in the entire verse and a person who can create zombies. And that could be a really interesting way to then bring back Big Mom and Kaido without necessarily, like, reviving them, right? Because I think I am of the assumption that they're still alive somehow, especially including Big Mom. But let's say, okay, fine, they're both dead, right? Like, maybe the way to bring them back into the story, because I just think those characters are so rich and it would be interesting visually to have them present during Final War, would again be to have Moria like create zombies or something of them. And if Moria's on the crew with Blackbeard and Blackbeard goes, like, that'd be a prime opportunity to create those zombies. Yeah.
Man, yeah, I would love that. Just any way to bring Kaido and Big Mom back into the story in a meaningful way where, like you said, where they don't bog the story down.
And they don't negate the death, right? And that they don't negate, like, what happened in Wano. Because I think that was another one of my big issues in Wano was, like, the Kinemon being alive thing. I think is people can say every day, like, no, it was telegraphed.
Dude.
Like, you know, Law took him apart. And, like, it totally makes sense for the story. That's fine. It does make sense for the story. But, like, in my personal opinion, because I always get in trouble for saying things objectively, in my personal opinion, that was the biggest piece of dog shit that Oda's ever done in the history of One Piece.
The thing is, they killed Ashura Doji, but they killed Ashura Doji, but they let Kinemon live. I'm a big Ashura Doji fan, so seeing Kinemon live through that, but seeing my man Doji die to dynamite
to nothing, right?
It was crazy. I couldn't believe my eyes.
Totally agree.
Oh man. But yeah, like with Kaido, Big Mom, and Gekko Moria, like with Gekko Moria specifically, I'm on the boat that he's gone. When it comes to Kobe, like I see him just like a Luffy, right? The minute Perona lets him out and says, hey, I need you up to get Gekko Moria out, I feel like he would have done that first thing. And that's maybe why we didn't see the whole, like, you know, Kobe escaping prison sequence, right?
Sure.
We saw that, and then we cut over, and then Kobe's outside running around. So I do think Gekko Moria is gone. I'm hoping he is. We did get that Vivre card update like the other day. And apparently Oda was playing around with the idea of having Perona be a key member of Cross Guild in the very beginning.
I love that.
So, you know, Oda was already thinking about getting, you know, Perona in there. So the chances of her and Gekko Moria joining Cross Guild or just being out and about, I think is pretty damn high.
And I would love that. Because I think the more that they amass of the old, I think like that's the beauty of what Oda did with Cross Guild, right?
Yeah.
Is finding a way to have those like original OG classic nostalgic villain characters find a way to be important towards the end of the series, right? Because I think a lot of them would not stand a chance at the last power level that we saw them at during like a Final War type situation. But if they're bolstered by the power of the Cross Guild, I mean, and you have all these people together, you can do some massive damage.
It's crazy.
So, yeah, I think that was, at least in terms of me being within the fandom, from like, you know, mid-Dressrosa to where we are now, that was one of the best reveals, I think, in the history of the time that I've covered One Piece, is the putting together of Cross Guild and like how important that is going to be moving forward to the very end of the story. I thought was great. Yeah.
No, I love Cross Guild. And with Gekko Moria too, we could just take your idea and, you know, dribble some crack on it, because they're collecting marine corpses, right? Like, bro, if Gekko Moria joins, dude, we could have like a zombie T-Bone over here, or like a zombie ex-Marine, zombie that Marine.
Exactly.
God.
Yeah, all the corpses of all the dead Marines that are getting their bounties. Exactly, right.
Yeah, kind of morbid, but hey, it could happen.
No, but it works. It totally works. Yeah.
Real quick, who's your favorite character in One Piece? Like who do you heir to?
I mean, Trafalgar D-Water Law right there. Law's always been my favorite. I think pretty much since his introduction, he's been my favorite character. And then Dressrosa just solidified it. I feel like even prior to that, the whole I broke the gear Punk Hazard speech, him versus Virgo, cutting Punk Hazard in half was peak. But then like actually getting his flashback in Dressrosa, and then that being one of my favorite flashbacks like in the history of the series. And then just all his different powers, the way he interacted with the main crew, the importance of the immortality surgery. I love Law. Anytime he's on screen, I love Law. And so I freaked when we got that Law versus Blackbeard line of chapters with like Beppo going Sulong and female Law and everything. It was just amazing. Yeah, I love Law.
Oh, so do you think Law's going to come back?
How about you? Who's your favorite?
Oh, dude, my favorite. This is gonna be a hot take. I mean, well, if you're on this channel, you know who my favorite is. But I'm a big Akainu fan.
Oh, great! That's not a hot take.
Absolute
That's awesome.
Justice. Yeah, it's literally a hot take. It's the Magma take. But Akainu, when it comes to like just how stubborn he is, Absolute Justice. I'm excited to see his backstory because I hope he does get fleshed out a little bit more. I want to see why he hates pirates so much. But at the end of the day, when I see these Marines, like, yes, there are a couple of bad Marines narratively, but in general, though, like, these Marines join the Navy for their own sense of justice, and they want to follow it through. So I'm kind of curious to see how it'll develop over the course of the story. And Akainu, notably, has been really rude to the Gorosei. Like, he's kind of like Garling, right? He just walks up, he says what he wants. He doesn't really care about them that much. So now that all this is happening, like, I want to see Akainu really take a stand for what he believes in. Maybe that's, hopeful thinking from my part, but, I do like Akainu.
I will say, if we don't ever get an Akainu flashback, or, like, we don't get something fleshed out with his story, that would be, to me, heinous. That would be one of the worst possible things that Oda could do by the end of One Piece, is not giving him a backstory or, like, a proper role within that final war. He has to. And I have no doubt he will, but I think if it wasn't to happen, I would be very, very upset. It's one of the few things, I think, moving into this final saga, that if we didn't get that fleshed out, I would just be so sad.
And then there's the thing with Dragon, too.
Yes, I was just going to bring that up, because I know, like, you talk with Brago a lot, and I was talking to Brago about this at Anime NYC last week, is we were discussing that line that Akainu has to Kizaru, right, where Kizaru is crying and mentions, have you ever killed your best friend? And Akainu's like, I'm sorry, brother.
Yeah, and he didn't even answer.
What exactly is he thinking of in that moment, right? Is there a relationship between Akainu and Dragon that existed, in the past? Is that maybe a friendship that was broken apart? Like, were they both Marines that went their own way with their own idea of justice, with, Dragon becoming a revolutionary and being disenchanted by the Marines and the way the world government did things? Meanwhile, Akainu saying this is the best way to go about it to keep order. I think that's going to make for a really interesting story moving into Final War.
Oh, yeah. And then even with the Kainu's hatred for people who desert the Navy as well, like Marineford, for example, where he killed that random guy running away. Like, that could remind him of Dragon, right? Like, oh, like, my best friend left the Navy. Like, you can't. Like, I'm going to stop this right now. No more.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, love him. As far as Law goes, though, do you think he's going to make a significant comeback in the story? And if so, where?
I mean, yes, Final War, I think, most likely is when it's going to happen. I don't see him being involved in Elbaf in any significant way, as cool as I think that would be. I think Elbaf is, for the most part, going to be relatively self-contained. I think, like, with what we've got moving forward in Elbaf, right, like, things that we know we're going to need to see. Resolution 4, we know we're going to need to see Saul and Robin's reunion, the books from O'Hara. We know we're going to need to see the stuff with Loki, the idea of the other giants that was proposed by Saul, all those story arcs ago, that, like, believe in something different, right? That, like, not all the giants believe in the same thing. Yeah. So you've got the giants that worship the sun god, but, like, what do the other giants worship, right? I think the ties with the Skypians, so, like, worshiping the sun god as well. I think there's going to be some type of tie there with, like, Burka, Eneru potentially coming back, Aruj, who's the only supernova who hasn't done anything major in any of these other story arcs post-time skip. So I feel like that's kind of going to be Aruj's arc as well. Also, when you look at his power base, being like the muscles and getting bigger every time he gets hit, makes sense in an island filled with giants. So I feel like that's probably going to be Aruj's arc. And then I feel like Law and the other remaining supernovas will probably have some type of role to play in that final war. I do wonder, though, if Law travels with the Straw Hats and the Grand Fleet, or whatever group of the Straw Hats, like, and their allies, travels to Laugh-Tale. I wonder if Law will be with them, or if something related to the immortality surgery is going to have to come into play. And that potentially, because we know, right, he can give it, but can he take it away? We don't know. And I'm almost wondering, after the stuff we saw with Emu, if Law is the linchpin that finally allows them to kill Emu, right? If Ivankov, who he already proposed this in the story, if Ivankov's theory is correct about Nerona Emu getting the immortality surgery in the past, and Law discovers that and knows a way to actually remove the immortality surgery using his fruit, potentially even at the cost of his own life, that would be the most baller way for Law to go out in the story, is to be the one who turns Emu mortal and can finally kill him. Please.
That could even explain why they wanted to pay 5 billion berries for the Ope Ope no Mi, because they wanted to get that out of circulation. Not because they wanted immortality surgery, but they just wanted to get that off the streets, you know? Like, they didn't want Imu to have any weaknesses out there. I could totally see that.
And also potentially even why he was allowed to join the warlords in the first place too.
Yeah.
Right? You want to keep your enemies closer. And I feel like maybe if they thought that he would be on their side, that they would, you know, be able to control him in some way, shape, or form, which of course they can't because he's law, but still.
Which I do gotta say, man,
Yeah.
from a world government standpoint, the dissolvement of the 7 warlords is a big fumble.
Yeah.
I mean, yes,
100%.
we had bad apples, but I mean, you lost Mihawk, right? You lost.
You created the Cross
hitters.
Guild. You literally created the Cross Guild.
Yeah.
So
like,
yeah.
I know they voted on it, but at what point does the Gorosei say, "Hey, guys, no, maybe we should keep these guys under, you know, in our payroll"?
But I think, you know, even this chapter alone has showed that the Gorosei clearly are like resting on their laurels and don't necessarily see all the repercussions of things that they might end up doing or might allow to pass, right? Look at Saturn. I mean, again, Saturn had the opportunity to dismantle that ancient robot and was like, nah, keep it around. We could use it as a weapon one day. And that ultimately was his downfall, right? That robot is the reason they were able to get away and is the reason that Saturn's dead now.
Yeah, they're not perfect, man. They make a lot of mistakes, that's for sure.
Make dumb mistakes.
That's crazy. So, as far as Garland goes, do you have any theories as to what powers he might have, what yokai powers, what mythological powers he has, as well as the Holy Knights? Because, you know, the Holy Knights are kind of like a, you know, divisive topic since they are going to be like the next Toby Roppo in a manner, right?
I mean...
So, what do you expect?
What I expect and what I hope for, I think, are different. I think what I expect... And I would be happy to be wrong about this. Like, in fact, I want to be wrong about this. What I expect is, I think, Saturn's powers being siphoned into Garling. Right? Garling literally getting the exact same yokai power that Saturn had. Yeah. And the reason behind this is, like, I don't know necessarily what the kanji or the katakana is for, like, Garling's name in Japanese. But obviously, he's got the whole moon theming with his beard, right? So that still goes in line with, like, the planet idea of the other 5 Elder Stars. Yeah. But also the name Garling, right, could potentially be like Gar Ring, so like a ring of Saturn, potentially. Like with Saturn obviously having this power and then him being the ring of Saturn, taking his place and potentially getting his yokai power siphoned into him by Imu, right? Because if he just joins, and then as soon as he joins, Saturn dies, I'm assuming that power's got to go somewhere, so maybe
welcome
it goes
back,
into
Saturn.
Garling. Right, exactly, right. So I'm wondering if maybe he ends up getting that yokai power, but what I would love to see is him getting some other type of yokai or some type of mythological creature, you know, some other type of new demon power that we haven't necessarily seen. Particularly, like, I would like to see something related to, like, moon mythology, right? With, like, the moon beard and everything. I don't know necessarily what that could be, but I think there's a lot of fun things that Oda could do in terms of, like, mythical creatures or Japanese mythology in relation to the moon that he could pull from. Like, do you have any ideas in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big perpetuator that Garling is going to be like a werewolf for the moon theme specifically.
There you go, more of the moon thing. There you go.
I love the werewolf theory. I'm a big fan of it, and I also think there might be a vampire as well because we do have like the bats in the world government. We have Stussy, who's like this weird, you know, vampire girl with no name devil fruit at all. So I think there might be like a vampire werewolf thing going on here.
I would love that.
As far as like mythology goes, like growing up, what was your favorite myth? Like, what was your favorite, like, cryptid or, like, you know, monster that you not looked up to, but, like, you're like, he's kind of cool?
They're not really monsters, necessarily. They're not bad. But, like, I've always liked the Egyptian gods. I've always thought they were cool. Anubis, Ra, even Ra being the sun god, right? And you've got the sun god Luffy. But I just loved the look of Egyptian mythology and that, like, realm of gods. And so, unfortunately, a lot of that stuff was utilized in Alabasta already. And, like, the theming has been used in other places. But, God, I would love to see something related to that, like something related to Egyptian mythology being pulled in. But, again, I don't necessarily think that would make sense for Garling. So, I don't know if we're going to ever see that. But, yeah, I mean... That's my favorite. I've always loved that. I literally have a mirror in my bathroom that I've had since childhood that has these 2 statues of Ra on either side with like a candle attached to it. What the heck? So yeah, I genuinely really, really love Egyptian mythology.
Man, hey, shout outs to our good friend Anubis Chaka.
There you go.
Hopefully he ever does something.
Yeah,
Chaka,
awakens his power and becomes some type of mythical jackal. Yeah, exactly.
I hope so. I mean, dude, Chaka, he fumbled at the Reverie. You know, every time we go back in the anime, we see like Cobra saying, "Hey, Pell, Chaka, I'll be back in a minute, guys. It's like,
Yeah,
Taco
sure you
Bell,
will,
what
buddy.
are you guys doing?
What are you doing? Leaving
You're
him
his
be. Yeah,
bodyguard.
right.
Like, at least stand outside the
Exactly.
room or something, man.
Exactly.
God, yeah. I mean, and then now, like, you see them during the Vegapunk broadcast, and they're chilling at home, going to Cobra's
Yep.
funeral. Their princess is missing, and it's like, I don't know. It seems so silly. Like, I wish they stood up and just did something else, or like became powerful. Because right now, I still don't see them as a powerhouse. We're talking about
Yeah,
like
I
how
don't
will
think
all
so
these
either.
characters fit in the final stages of the story. That's how I feel about Chaka and Pell. It's like, where are they going to
sure.
come in?
For sure. Yeah, I don't necessarily expect some type of big power jump for any of these characters. I think it's like more of a power in numbers kind of thing, right? Where instead of just being nameless thugs and nameless gifters or pleasures or whatever, like they're actual named characters within this final war that we've come to know and love over all these years.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of loved characters, Don Krieg made a comeback, like, I think a couple months ago, man.
That was wild
you think
seeing
about
him with the long hair, with the sunglasses. Yeah, I don't know if that's actually going to amount to anything, but seeing him with Blackbeard's group was certainly interesting.
Yeah, I mean, he's with Geen too. Like, dude, you can tell they had a glow up to some extent, right?
Oh, they did, for sure. I don't necessarily think we're going to see them utilizing, like, armament hockey or something when we see them again. That'd be kind of cool, though. I mean, at the very least, if they had armament hockey, that would be kind of neat. But, yeah, I don't think they have any significant role to play beyond maybe, like, some type of reunion during Final War, right?
Yeah,
where you
or
have
like
a
an
moment where
OVA.
all the characters are fighting, and then Sanji's like, oh, wait a minute, I know you guys. Boom, kick to the face, and then he moves on and goes to the next thing, so.
I wonder, would Don Krieg still want to, like, antagonize Luffy at this point? Like, he sees Luffy and he's like, hey, like, I fought this guy in the past, I gotta fight him one more time.
I mean, I don't necessarily think he wants to, but I think he probably wants some semblance of revenge. So I don't know if he'd be able to contain himself to go after him, but I think he knows he would lose.
Yeah, especially given, like, Luffy's bounty at this point, like, 3 billion is kind of insane.
Yeah, it's absolutely absurd.
I don't know what Don Krieg's bounty is, but I don't think it's anywhere, like, close to that. Like, I give him, like, 300 million at the max.
Yeah. I'm curious, you brought up bounties, and so obviously that's the one other big post-arc thing that we haven't seen yet with Egghead, and with Egghead, being such a massive part of the story and the incident being broadcast across the world, I think, like, more so than many of the other story arcs that we've seen at this point, I think we are due for a bounty upgrade for the crew, and I'm curious, like, do you have any ideas on that? Because I don't think Luffy's endgame bounty is going to happen after Egghead. I think that'll be, like, probably after Final War, but I'm curious.
Yeah, for Luffy's bounty, I have him in the higher 3s. Like, I'd say I give him like a 3.8, 3.5.
Okay.
Which sounds silly because, like, from a world government perspective, Luffy at this point, you want to give him like an infinite number, right? Like, Will of D, Sun God, get this guy off the streets. Like, I would have, man, the minute I saw Monkey D. Luffy in the East Blue, I'd be like, hey guys, $1 billion berries.
You see,
like,
dude, rubber powers, I'm like, even if there's a potential for this guy to end up being the Sun God, if there's even a slight chance, we got to take him out, right?
Exactly. But I don't think that's going to happen, though. I doubt they're going to throw, like, the infinity number, like, in front of Luffy's poster. So I think Luffy's going to get, like, a nice 3.5, 3.8 maybe. I don't think he's going to surpass Shanks, who's at 4 billion yet. And like you said, I agree that this isn't going to be Luffy's end game bounty because I feel like the final bounty is going to be 5.6. Just so that it slightly surpasses
I mean, it's literally,
Roger.
It's going to be 5.6. I mean,
100%.
The fact that he was so particular with Rogers says to me, like, of course, it's just going to be slightly higher than Roger was by the end. And the Gomu Gomu play is just like, it's clear as day. That's what it's going to be, is 5.6.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I've seen people throw out, like, crazy numbers like 10 billion, and it's like, I don't think that's going to be a thing, right? Like, because Roger, like, I think Oda's going to find a way to respect Roger's bounty by just putting Luffy slightly above it. Because if Luffy's, like, a mountain up here, and Roger's at the base, it's like, okay, that looks kind of crazy. Also, Roger's base, that's kind of nuts I did that. But,
I know, that's right.
Yeah, like, so where are you at with Luffy's bounty?
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement. 5.6 is like what I've been saying pre-Whole Cake Island. I think Final War is what we're going to see is 5.6.
Yeah.
I actually am in disagreement about the Shanks thing, though. I actually think if this is his second to last bounty, I think him being tied with Shanks would be very, very interesting because that would be then the play moving into Final War. Because I personally don't think we're going to see Shanks at all in Elbaf, right? He's off doing his own thing now. I think we're probably going to see them unite in Final War. I do think that opens up then the opportunity for Luffy to finally be at the level to give him his hat back. Not that I think he ever will, and not that I think Shanks is even making it out of the series alive, but I do think, realistically, You have to have that moment of being like on the same level, and you get that line from Shanks being like, the next time I see Luffy, I hope he gives me the hat back now. Or some type of line similar to that, so that when they finally do reunite, Luffy has that moment of wanting to do it and is not able to do it due to, Shanks dying or somebody killing him or whatever. Yeah.
So as far as Shanks dying, who do you think kills him?
Oh, Blackbeard? I know it's Blackbeard. I know it's Blackbeard.
I was gonna say,
it's not even like it's not even like a question. Like, I know it's Black. I could tell you how it's gonna happen. I am so confident in how it's gonna happen. We're gonna be at the end of Final War. Imu's taken care of. Gorosei are taken care of. Fleet Admiral's taken care of. The entire world government is in a tizzy. The Marines are in a tizzy. Everything is upended, right? And previously, knowing what Oda said about the end of the story, I always thought Final War would be after Laugh Tale, right? That they would get to Laugh Tale, Luffy would discover the One Piece, it would be a truth about the world, it would usher the world into the Final War. I no longer believe that. I now fully believe Imu, the Gorosei, Marines, everybody are taken care of pre-Laugh Tale. And that at the end of everything, Luffy, Buggy, Shanks, and Blackbeard, the ones left standing at the end of this final fight, go, all right, now's the time. We're all that's left in terms of the power structure of the world, or the Four Yonko. We're going after Laugh Tale. Blackbeard does something to either guarantee a kill against Luffy or Buggy, or both, and Shanks, being the brother of Buggy and the mentor of Luffy, sacks himself to allow Buggy and Luffy to go after Laugh Tale and achieve their dreams. And you get this really emotional moment, because obviously, again, both of them have ties to Roger, both of them have ties to Shanks directly. I think that also opens up what I think definitively is going to be the final fights of the series in Laugh Tale, and also allows for that little bit of a buffer where we can have a clash between Cross Guild and Straw Hats before you get that final Blackbeard confrontation and that final Blackbeard power-up. Because what I think is going to happen is Blackbeard ends up killing Shanks in an attack that was either directed at Luffy or was directed at Buggy, or both, right? Or Shanks sees a future in which Blackbeard's going to achieve his dream, and Shanks is like, I can't let that happen, and sacks himself. So I think that happens, end of Final War going to Laugh Tale, where you get
I agree.
Luffy's group, Buggy's group going to Laugh Tale. I then think, right when you get to Laugh Tale, you get some type of confrontation, either a full-on fight or a Davy back at Laugh Tale for the One Piece between Cross Guild and Luffy's group. And you've got Luffy, battle. Zoro, and Sanji between Buggy, Crocodile, and Mihawk. Now, the thing about this, and the reason why I bring this up, is you keep getting this imagery about the wings of the Pirate King, right? With Sanji and with Zoro being the wings of the Pirate King with Luffy. You also get a lot of thematic resonance with Buggy failing his way upwards. I could absolutely, and also a thing that's important to note about all of this, because now I'm going like full theory hat on about like what I think is going to happen at the end, and Shanks and Blackbeard and all this stuff. So excuse me if I'm talking too much. Please stop me at any time.
No, go for it. Floor's yours.
I fully believe, that we're going to get a pre-final fight Looney Tunes super goofy battle between Luffy and Buggy. That we're going to get Luffy literally just obliterating Buggy in the goofiest, most absurd ways, like stretching him out, doing crazy stuff with it. Because again, Otis said he doesn't want things to be too serious at the end of the story, right? They get there, Luffy completely washes Buggy, sends him flying Team Rocket style, right? That leaves Crocodile and Mihawk. And the two of them are going to go up to Luffy, and Zoro and Sanji are like, no, we'll handle it. As the wings of the Pirate King, we're going to handle these two. You go off and find the One Piece, right? Luffy goes off and does his own thing. Meanwhile, flashback to Blackbeard having just killed Shanks, and Imu and all these five elders being dead. The power's got to go somewhere. If Imu is indeed the Devil Fruit user and has the strongest mystical zone in the entire series, who's going to want it? Blackbeard. Who's probably going to get it, utilizing his powers at the end of everything, if the Yonko are all that's left standing? Blackbeard. Blackbeard gets Imu's power and then becomes the ultimate final fight for Luffy, right? Where you've got the strongest mythical devil fruit, literally the devil being the zone. You've got the strongest Paramecia with the Gura Gura, and you've got the strongest Logia. Blackbeard and his core members go off to Laugh Tale, right? Trail behind Luffy and Buggy. Obviously, Shanks stalled him out enough, but Blackbeard's going to find a way over there, because of course he is, because he's the final villain. All right. With that being said, Buggy, after that goofy fight with Luffy, gets flown on the other side of Laugh Tale, right? Thrown to the other side. He's like, what the heck? I got to get back to my crew, whatever. Stumbles upon the One Piece, finds it first. Morgans, who's in the sky above all of this, reports to the world that Buggy has become the Pirate King and discovered the One Piece. But Buggy is not going to know what the hell to do with it, right? Buggy's going to see this. It's not meant for him. It's meant for Luffy. So he's going to be like, what the hell is this? I wanted treasure. I don't want any of this. And makes his way back to the crew. Meanwhile, to the rest of the world, it gets reported Buggy is the Pirate King, which then allows Luffy to truly become the Pirate King, right? Freely, to discover what the truth is at the actual One Piece while that final fight with Zoro and Mihawk is happening. Because I think the important thing about the whole end of One Piece as a whole is that all of the dreams of the crew need to be fulfilled at some point around the same time, right?
Yeah.
If half of the crew's dreams are fulfilled before the other half of the crews are, like narratively, that wouldn't make a lot of sense. So a lot of this stuff has to happen concurrently. So Zoro becoming the world's greatest swordsman has to happen somewhat concurrently with Luffy becoming Pirate King, with Sanji discovering the All Blue, with Chopper curing every illness. You know what I mean? Like, that's all kind of going to happen at the same time. Blackbeard, which ties into the stuff with Shanks and killing Shanks and everything like that. Blackbeard, I think, is going to roll up in Laugh Tale with his core group of people that we saw back in Jaya. Van Augur, Burgess, Doc Q, potentially Lafitte. But that's it. Everybody, I think Devon, I think, like, Alvaro, specifically Shiyu, they're all taken out in Final War. They're all taken out. And I actually think Shiyu is the Final War opponent for Zoro. And that Zoro's, of course, final opponent then ends up being Mihawk at Laugh Tale with, you know, the Cross Guild. So,
yeah.
And then throw it in there
weird.
a little bit, too, just for a little bit of spice. Sanji and Crocodile, which I could do a whole breakdown of, but I'm not going to right now.
It's so strange because I feel like your answer, I love that, by the way. Like, the way you narrated that, it's almost like I was reading the chapter. I was like, oh, you know what?
Yeah, right.
This is not
right.
good. Like, pretty good visuals here. Like, you know,
right.
you just close your eyes. You're like, okay, I could actually envision all of this. But what was kind of weird is that, you know, like you said, Zoro versus Shiryu, Zoro versus Mihawk, because we see Shiryu as a Zoro opponent, but when you rank them, it's like, okay, like, does Zoro fight Mihawk first and then Shiryu? Because that would feel weird, right? Zoro beats the world's strongest swordsman, so why does Shiryu matter, right? Like, because he's not going to be a Mihawk level opponent.
Right.
So I like that you incorporated a way where Zoro fights Shiryu first, and then he fights Mihawk without Blackbeard being beaten at the same time.
And the Shiryu thing I also think is important because in the grand scope of Final War, right, all the Yonko crew will be there. All four of them are going to be present in Final War, attacking each other prior to the final confrontation between them and Laugh Tale, right? So there need to be some casualties. And I also see a situation with Mihawk being the one to have trained Zoro during the time skip, in which there is some level of admiration there, in which I could see a way in which Shiryu tries a way to, like, backstab and do something to take out Mihawk in sort of like a slimy way, and Zoro's like, no. I need to beat him, become the world's greatest swordsman. You're doing this the wrong way, going invisible and trying to stab him from behind or whatever. He's like, that's not the swordsman way. I'm going to teach you a thing or two. Ends up, you know, decimating Shiryu.
Yeah.
And then that leads into the actual fight with Mihawk, like the actual true 1v1, you know, real man's fight. Not like the coward's way out that Shiyu's probably going to go about trying to take him out during Final War.
And then in my headcanon, though, like, nothing would work against Mihawk in that manner. Like, if Shiryu were to go invisible, my God, the guy's named Hawkeye. You know,
of course.
In the early draft, he was named the Clairvoyant Mihawk. And it's like,
yes.
No way you're turning invisible and stabbing this guy in the back. No. Shiryu won't stand a chance.
I think Zoro, Shiryu doesn't stand a chance, but I do think Zoro will take offense to Shiryu trying. Yeah. And I think that's going to be the sort of like the crux that puts the two of them together in Final War.
And then maybe even Mihawk respects it too. He's like, oh, yep.
Yeah.
Train this guy well. Yeah.
For sure.
He's got the respect.
Exactly. Like some type of situation in which, like, Shiryu does something dirty to Mihawk, right? Stabs him or does something, or actually, like you said, wasn't able to get away with whatever he tried. And then having that moment between Zoro and Mihawk in Final War where Mihawk's like, I'll see you at Laugh Tale. And that, right, like, bro, the chills that would come from that type of line from Mihawk of, like, at the end of Final War.
That'd be good.
Would be so sick. Yeah.
He's like, it looks like you're ready, Rowan Noah. Meet me over there.
Right. Meet me, exactly.
God.
Meet me in Laugh Tale. You're ready. Yeah.
So as far as Elbaf goes, that's the island we're going to next. Do you think there is a big bad villain waiting for us on the island? Who's your stocks on when it comes to the man who said, "Come on, then." Like who is that
Right.
guy for you? Who is that silhouette?
I've seen a lot of people saying Scopper, right? I
Yeah.
feel like that's probably at this point who it is, Scopper or Shiki or somebody. To be fair, I don't really care. And I'm going to tell you why. I think whoever it ends up being is not going to be final villain of Elbaf or
yeah.
even particularly that important to the overall story. I really truly think that all of the stuff with the giants that we've seen them be such strong warriors, the internal conflict that we already know is there with Loki trying to be married off to Big Mom's family, Loki not necessarily doing things the same way that the other giants do things, only seeing him in silhouette. I feel like Loki has potential for some type of like villain type thing to happen during Elbaf, but I also think this is the opportunity Eneru comes back. I actually genuinely, fully believe Eneru comes back during
He has
Elbaf.
to. At some point, like, Enel has to come back into the story, right? Like, it's just a matter of when. Same with Scopper and Shiki, right? Like,
Yes.
these are characters that need to come in at some point. It's just a
Yes.
matter of when. And as we knock out these islands, like, the chances of them coming in, it gets higher and higher. Like, I know people are scarred by the Scopper thing, right? Every island, Scopper.
Scopper's here, right?
But that's the thing,
Scopper,
like,
Scopper is the
chance goes
Mephisto
up.
of the MCU, where every time there's an MCU
Oh
show
my
or MCU movie, everyone's like, it's Mephisto, Mephisto's showing up, and then it's never Mephisto. I feel like that's how Scopper
so
is for
funny.
One Piece. So when we finally end up seeing him, I'll be like, oh, cool. Okay, here he is. Finally, you know.
Yeah,
but
I
I'm not
watch,
like, yeah, I'm not super hyped for Scopper Gabon.
Yeah, I watch New Rockstars, and I watch, like, their breakdowns every so often. Like, guys, Mephisto, this is a Mephisto reference.
This
and
is
it's like,
Mephisto. Yeah.
I see it, but it's also at the same time like, dude, Mephisto's never coming. It's like Dragon, you know, like one day they will, but it's not today, man. It's not today.
No,
Sad to say.
No. No, I think it's a lot of internal conflicts among the giants themselves.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of discovery, this arc. I feel like Elbaf is going to be a really lore dumpy kind of arc, probably similar to Zoe and Skypiea, right? Where there's a lot of stuff that's introduced that ends up becoming important to the final story. And I don't necessarily see it being a conflict in the same way that like something like Egghead or Wano was, right? Like I don't necessarily know if we even necessarily need an overall villain beyond like a small confrontation with Eneru descending from the sky or like Loki and his people and how they differ from the giants. I think Elbaf as a location has enough interesting things tied to the overall lore of One Piece that it could be more of like an adventure style exploration Skypiea or Zoe type arc more than it is like an actual confrontation among another giant group similar to something like Wano or Egghead. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement as well. Because, like, with Elbaf, like, Shanks was just there. If there really was, like, a big, bad, you know, villain like Kaido, for example, on that island, why didn't Shanks beat him, right? Like, Shanks is a good guy. Like, if there was a truly evil figure in Wano, Shanks would have been like, hey, let's take care of this for my friends, and then let's get the hell out of here, right?
Exactly.
That's kind of how I see this whole situation.
I completely agree with you. And I also think narratively there was a reason for him to show the Mother Flame stuff in Egghead, but not fully resolve it, right? We now know that it's in the hands of the world government, but we didn't really see like what it can do. We know what it can power, but we don't know what it can do. And we did see the Mother Flame pretty much clear as day in Eneru's cover story, where you see it literally within that sun, right? You get the hieroglyphs and everything, and you see the Mother Flame. It's in the wall. So I do think something tied with the moon and the idea of like the worship of the sun god potentially being there, like a group of giants that worship a moon god, the ties between Skypiea and Elbaf in which the giants and the Skypieans both also worship the sun god, them worshiping the same god, Uruj being from Burka wanting revenge against Eneru, obviously because Eneru 6 years ago destroyed his home island. We never really got that resolution or that confrontation between the two of them. Eneru potentially descending from the sky with Uranus, right? Or because we don't know really what's going on with Uranus. We assume that Emu has Uranus or can control Uranus, but at the same time, that could be a faux Uranus, right? We don't know fully what that's being powered by. We know the Gorosei want the Mother Flame to power Uranus, but we still don't know necessarily if that is what that was in Lulusia or if that was a replica of the real thing that Eneru actually has control of up in the sky, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that is going to be I think the big thing with Elbaf, setting everything sort of into play for the ending, is again, more of an adventure arc, more of getting all of the ancient weapons in place. We already know about Shirahoshi. We already know about Pluton and Wano. Now we just need to know about Uranus. And I think the sun god, the ties to the sky, Burka, Skypieans, giants, all that stuff kind of just ties together nicely there, and could also be like fully fleshed out with the lore, with the books from O'Hara that Saul has when he reunites with Robin. So there's just like a lot of really nice things that are sort of tying everything together there. And I think the only thing sort of left over after all of that will potentially be the final road poneglyph, and that potentially a discovery at the end of Elbaf that, oh, the final road poneglyph, the reason why no one's been able to find it is because it's been in control of the world government, right? The world government has had it all these years, and that leads into Mara Joa, leads them into Final War, leads all the Yonko to descend upon it, where they all, need the final road poneglyph to get to Laugh-Tale, and that sets up everything for the final arc at Laugh-Tale. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean with Elbaf, I agree. Like I'm on board. It is going to be an adventure arc. Like I can't imagine a big bad villain even rolling up to Elbaf, right? Like the VAs wanted to go in this chapter in 1125, and then Saturn said, hey. We're good.
Yeah, let's not do this, but we're good.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like,
exactly.
Dude, not only do you have to fight the Straw Hats, but you have to fight the Giants. Like, you don't want to antagonize these guys. It's not worth it.
No.
The Marines have way more problems on their hands with the rebelling nations. They have the Celestial Dragon food shortage. They also have Cross Guild. Like, there's so many moving parts in the world right now. And, even the Shishibukai, right?
Yeah.
Like, they lost all these guys, and they're going on a rampage. So it's like, they need to not focus on Luffy for a little bit. And I could totally see Elbaf being a semi-peaceful arc. How peaceful can it get in the Land of Giants where these guys are all warriors?
Right, the Warland. They literally call it Warland.
There's already conflict there. Like, maybe we'll have like a Coliseum match like Dressrosa, but more honorable in a way.
Yeah.
And maybe that's where we get Usopp stuff too.
People, Usopp stuff for sure is happening, but I also think like people have been feasting for an actual real Davy back, right? Like we saw the setup for it with Foxy pre-time skip, but now like this could be a really fun opportunity with Warland in a place that's constantly in combat to have some type of friendly confrontation between the Giants and between the Straw Hats, right? Where you even have that moment from Luffy at the end of Egghead where they're all having that giant cheers at the end where he's like, I don't know if we're going to stay friends forever, but for now, whee, off to Elbaf.
Let's do it, guys.
Like that would be a great way to sort of do that and to amass more giants within, our main squad going into Final War. And I also think, tying into Norse mythology and all that stuff too, you've got Eneru, right? Eneru has Thor powers, right? The Rumble fruit, lightning, literally has attacks that are titled Thor, El-Thor. Showing up in Elbaf, having potentially a connection between the actual Thor in Elbaf, like within the lore of Elbaf, maybe having had the Rumble fruit and that being tied then to Eneru descending back down could be really interesting. I also think, like within Ragnarok, right? The actual mythology of Ragnarok, right? Ragnarok is the final war that destroys Norse mythology. And we see this time and time again. God of War, Thor, all this other stuff. I think the death of Eneru or the defeat of Eneru being our crux to kick us into Final War because now we have Uranus at our disposal and we're rolling up into it, like, could be really interesting. And I think there's a lot of ties to Norse mythology and the story of One Piece as a whole that makes Elbaf the perfect lead-in to Final War.
Huh. So, okay. So, Enel, you say he's going to be defeated. Yeah. So you think he's going to come back as a villain still? Because that's the hard part with Enel. Because, like, I want to believe in the good side of Enel. Like, okay, maybe he's learned his lesson, but he's so stubborn, right? When somebody has that god complex, they never change. Right? For Crocodile and all these other characters, sure, Luffy beats him and then maybe they're a changed man. Maybe even Kaido to an extent. But Enel is a hard one. And that's where I'm hung up at. Like, if he comes back and he's a villain again, would he even be a challenge to Luffy? Because their powers are so opposite.
No, I do not think he would be a challenge for Luffy at all. Which is why I think it's interesting, right? Because for everybody else, as Oda's already said, he would wipe the floor with them. Like, pre-time skip Eneru, Oda straight up said would wipe the floor with like 90% of the One Piece verse. Like, would take out nearly every character. And that was pre-observation haki actually being utilized in the same way we've seen with like someone like Katakuri or Shanks. That's pre-armament haki. That's pre-conquerors haki. Like, I definitely feel like we could see a situation in which within these 2 years on the moon, he's discovered something about himself. Because at the end of the day, you have to remember, haki was introduced in whose arc? Eneru's arc. It was called Matra, but it was his arc is where all this stuff got set up. So I think it would be a really cool full circle moment to see him come back, utilizing every different iteration of haki and still, not being a match for Luffy at the end of the day. And all of these other giants having to be the one to go against him, and Luffy being held back by something else that potentially is, some type of MacGuffin within Elbaf. Either his powers are restrained in some way, or there's like something to do with the religion of the sun god that we don't know about with the Elbafians, and yeah, I don't know. But I do think absolutely when Eneru comes back, he's going to be more of a threat, but he's not a threat to Luffy. He's a threat to everybody else. And it's also not just him. It's like Uranus. It's whatever technology he's discovered on the moon. It's like descending upon this warland with this conflict, this place that's always in conflict with all these giants going against each other, with this sort of like third party that nobody knows what to deal with. And again, that being the thing that then ushers in Urouge wanting to help us. Right? Because, like, you've seen all these other supernova eventually ally with Luffy in some way, shape, or form. Wano with Law and Kid. You've got, Egghead with Bonnie. You've got Whole Cake with Capone. You've seen this time and time again. All of them, in some way, have allied or been in conflict with the Straw Hats. Even, like, you look at Hawkins, Apu, all of them in Wano Country. Drake. The only one that has not been seen in a meaningful way is Urouge. And Urouge, being the Mad Monk from Burka was destroyed, we know this, by Eneru. Like, when else is that gonna come up in the story? It would never make sense to come up during Final War or Laugh Tale. They're gonna be jokes by that point. Like, we're not gonna be worried about Urouge and Eneru moving into Final War and Laugh Tale. If it happens, it needs to happen now, or it's not going to happen. Like, and that's just straight up the truth of it. It's
Urouge
either now or
character.
it's never. Yeah.
Like, I mean, I feel like out of all the Supernova, Urouge has my least favorite ability. Because just when you think about it, like, getting hit to get stronger is never a good ability, right? It sounds good on paper, but if you don't have the durability, you're just going to get waxed. And when I think of Urouge, it's like, yeah, there's no way he's going to be a villain, right? I can't imagine Urouge being like an Apu or Hawkins where he's like, oh, Straw Hat Luffy, I'll take you on. No. It's like, oh, God. So, yeah, I think
also,
Urouge will come back
you
and
brought
just give
that
us
up with
that
his
lore.
Devil Fruit. Oh, for sure. You brought up his Devil Fruit power. Again, like, his Devil Fruit is perfect for Elbaf. The idea of getting hit and then you become bigger is perfect. If you're going to be an ally of the giants, at what point do you just go like, look, all right, I need to defeat this guy. Let me take some hits. Dory Brogy, give me your best shot. Boom.
Yeah.
Boom, 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 boom. Get super strong and then wipe him out. Like, I could definitely see some fun interactions with Urouge, the giants, and the Straw Hats. And so, yeah, I don't see a realm in which he's against the sun god. Because, again, he's a monk. His people also believed in the sun god. They're Birkins. So if he comes face to face with the sun god, he's going to be an ally the same way the giants were, the same way Bonnie and Kuma were. Like, he's going to see it go, oh my God, this is Nika. Let me help you in any way that I can. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it's we're at the point of the story where it would be almost silly, blasphemous to antagonize Luffy, right? Like, we talked about that with Don Krieg. It's like, imagine Urouge comes back and he's like, oh, like, Luffy the sun god? Let's try our hand at him.
Exactly.
But there's no way.
Exactly.
There's no way.
And I think that's also a really cool way to bring back Eneru too, right? Of Eneru thinking and us literally seeing within the story how strong he's gotten over these 2 years, and him still being a joke against Luffy, right? No matter what, no matter how strong he got with the, activating some crazy thing within his powers, maybe awakening the Rumble fruit. I don't know what the heck that's gonna do, but that would be crazy. Especially if, like, this is me, just like I just said this off the top of my head, but like something in relation to maybe being able to nullify the minks going Sulong with their electricity powers, like something to do with removing electricity or like creating electricity, like electrifying other people, maybe magnetizing things in a way. Like, there's a lot of things you could do with the awakening of Eneru's power, in addition to him actually utilizing advanced observation, advanced armament, and potentially even within himself, advanced conquerors. But that's a whole other discussion.
Oh, yeah.
Because again, that has to be something latent within yourself. That's not something you could just train.
I mean, we saw what Luffy did with lightning back on Onigashima, right? He grabbed the lightning, he like rubberized it and threw it back at Kaido. And it's like, dude, if Enel comes over here, like, I think Luffy's gonna yank his chain. It's gonna be so
100%.
crazy.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why I think it's gonna be something in which, like, Luffy in some way, due to the lore of the sun god or the beliefs of the sun god or Elbaf in general, there's going to be something that is going to metaphorically chain Luffy down throughout the course of this arc. Not physically, like, not that he won't be able to run around and like participate in the story, but I think like literally there is going to be a nerf. There's going to be something where, like, in Elbaf, you can't utilize your sun god powers. And why that is, I don't know. We'll probably find out within the story. But I think that is the opportunity that then Eneru sees with either advanced observation or Uranus or the ties to the sun god or whatever, to be the perfect opportunity to descend from the sky and take advantage of the situation. And then by the end of it, of course, like you said, when they're like, how do we defeat him? Luffy and Chains and Looney Tunes, and just completely obliterates Enero. Right.
All right, so here's a question, kind of bouncing off of that as well. Like, as far as, going back to the Gorosei, how do you think Luffy is going to learn how to do permanent damage to them? Do you think we'll learn that here in Elbaf? And the reason I bring this up is because you mentioned, like, maybe Luffy doesn't go Gear 5th. I was like, okay, maybe he, like, learns a little bit, grows a little bit. I think Luffy could definitely get stronger in this arc because the Giants know so much about the Sun God, right? Like, they could tell Luffy, like, hey, the Sun God actually could do this ability too. Why don't you give it a try, right?
Think of it like Metroid.
How do you think?
It's like a good way to, this is a good way to put it, right? You know, at the beginning of every Metroid game, Samus loses her powers, and then over the course of the game, you gain more powers, and by the end of the game, you're stronger than you were at the end of the previous game. I kind of think it's something similar to that, in which he gets some type of Sun God nerf upon arriving, but then by the end, has fully awakened Sun God powers, knows how to utilize Gear 5th pretty much infinitely, can do whatever he needs to do, doesn't become an old man anymore, doesn't run out of his stamina as easily as he did at the end of Egghead, and that is sort of like his power growth, right? That's how I see Luffy growing over the course of Elbaf. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And then as far as the Gorosei goes, like, how do you think you hurt them? Do you think it's hockey related? Do you think it's like
I think it's Emu related. And I don't think we even discover that until Final War. And I think in order to be able to hurt them or do damage to them, you have to do something to Emu, which is why I think Law is going to become so important moving forward. It's because I do think Final War, because it's already been telegraphed in the story, Ivankov said it. And I feel like if a major character theorizes something within One Piece, it's probably going to end up being true, right? So I do think Emu Neurona was given the immortality surgery way back when, has a devil fruit power, a literal devil fruit power, and in order to nerf him and hurt him, you need to actually take away the immortality ability. And I think the only one to do that would be Law, and I think the place for that would be Final War. And again, once you take down Emu, the other cards fall, right? That's the Gorosei disintegrate, like Thanos at the end of Infinity War. One gets snapped, they all get snapped, you know?
I think that's a great way as well to stall out a lot of other fights, right? Because you're going to have so many people in that Final War. Like, if they defeat their respective opponents, whether it's the Gorosei or the Holy Knights, and, you know, like, if they just make it to that throne room and help Luffy, it's like you're going to have a dog pile on Emu. So a good way to stall out everybody while Luffy fights him, or whoever fights him, is to have Emu be linked to all of them. So, like, like Zoro beat his opponent, but his opponent just keeps on getting back up. And it's not until Luffy beats Emu where they all just disintegrate at the very end, which is a reason why I really like that idea.
Yeah, I totally believe that'll be the case. I think the other 5 elders, unless they screw up and Emu chooses to kill them, or Emu in a last-ditch attempt to stop the good guys siphons all their powers at the same time to become super strong and like actually absorbs like everything and goes fine. I don't need, exactly. That type of thing. It's going to go one of two ways. Yeah, but I feel like at the end of Final War, again, once Emu falls, all the other cards fall. Yeah.
I love that. Also, you know, I guess I never asked you when we hopped into this. Do you have like a time limit or anytime you got to get out of here, by the way? I don't want to keep you up.
We're good. Okay, cool.
We're good. So, Dragon now. This guy, Dragon, brother.
Yes.
He said it's time. It's time. We need to make a swift move on the world government. We have to stop this before it gets out of hand and civilians start attacking each other for safe ground. How do you feel about Dragon? You know, like, how do you feel about him as a character? How do you think he's going to go up in the future? Like, what are your thoughts on him, man?
Yeah, couple things. Yeah. First off, I am in Team Mugiwara Matt B that's always said Dragon has been slept on, and I can't wait for the Revolutionaries to make their move. I am so unbelievably excited for Dragon and the Final War. I think we're not going to see really anything from Dragon or any of those Revolutionaries until after Elbaf. I think Elbaf ends and we go directly into Final War, and maybe throughout Elbaf we get glimpses of things happening on the front lines of them actually, you know, rallying the people and going against Marijoa and actually, you know, facing the Holy Knights and going against Emu. I could see that conflict starting during Elbaf, but I don't think we actually see the majority of it until after Elbaf has concluded. I also think it would be narratively very cool for at some point Dragon to go up against Garling. For the father of Luffy versus the father of Luffy's mentor, I think would be super duper sick. I also think there's a high likelihood he's present during the final fight against Emu, literally being the head of the Revolutionaries, taking him out. I also think he could be present in the fight against Akainu. But, and I know you're an Akainu lover, so I hate to do this to you, I actually
He's got to
think
lose. He's got to lose.
I think Akainu's final opponent is Sabo. I really think it's Sabo.
Okay, that hurts.
I truly believe it's Sabo because the whole thing with Akainu, saying your fire will never be stronger than my magma, all the way that was telegraphed, Sabo not being there and being devastated by that during Marineford, not being able to save Ace, all the stuff with his amnesia, him being horrified by this for years. Like, his entire buildup is to the moment in which he could take revenge against Akainu and avenge his brother Ace. And so I feel like that's when you get, as everybody said for years and years and years, that's when you get the blue fire that's hotter than the magma. That's when you get that last Hiken against Akainu. I really think like that is his opponent. And that dragon maybe is the first opponent for Akainu. And obviously Luffy has some type of fight against Akainu as well. Like they all little by little by little by little, batter him down. But that his final opponent, the one who actually does the final damage against him, is Sabo.
They just like run a train on him, like one after another, just
one
Luffy,
after the
Sabo,
other. Yeah,
Dragon.
yeah,
No.
for sure. I mean, I think we're going to see a situation similar to Kaido, right? With the way that Oda's hyped up Akainu, saying that if he went after the One Piece, he'd find it in 6 months. Like he's hyped up as this super duper strong character, and he's the figurehead of the Marines. So, like, of course he's going to be powerful. Of course there's going to be multiple people against him. Of course you're going to get a Dragon Akainu. Of course you're going to get Sabo Akainu. Of course you're going to get Luffy Akainu. But I think ultimately at the end of the day, the final punch is Sabo. And I think Luffy is going to be off dealing with Imu, and I think Dragon potentially is dealing with Garling or also dealing with Imu.
Man, see, I agree. Narratively, I think it makes sense that Sabo fights Akainu to some extent. And it always hurts because, I love Akainu, so it's like, I know he has to lose, but I want him to lose to somebody, like, big. So I'm going to spin this kind of the opposite way. I like the Sabo idea a lot. Let's say Sabo fights Akainu. Sabo's fire is hotter than Akainu's magma. But Dragon steps in at the very end and says, hey, let me deal with this guy. Like, I knew him back in the day. And then Dragon is the one who beats him. Because at the end of the day, I love these villains, but they have to lose, right?
Yes.
So I do think Dragon might be the one who shows Akainu what true justice really is. Because they have very different mindsets on everything, right? We have the leader of the Revs versus the leader of the Marines. Dragon says there's no justice in the Marines. Akainu believes in absolute justice. I feel like Dragon should be the one who really knocks the wind in his sails back up again and shows him the right way to go about things. And maybe that's when Dragon, or that's when Akainu says, hey guys, like Marines, maybe we should listen to my old friend here. Like maybe he's not wrong, right? Maybe fighting the world government is the way to go.
Okay, so you think there's actually possibility for redemption?
For Akainu, yes. As far as like Akainu, like post, past the end of the series, I don't think so. I think he's gonna retire or just straight up die. But I do think there is going to be a moment where Akainu realizes that maybe he hasn't been doing things in the best way. Or maybe he shouldn't have been following the world government, which I got to say, like, it doesn't seem like he wants to. Like, that's just kind of like the spot he's put in. But, like Doberman, for example, like I kind of looked it up the other day. Somebody mentioned it as well, but Doberman is listed as an avid follower of absolute justice. That's the same justice as Akainu. Doberman got done dirty in this chapter. I mean,
totally.
Dude,
yeah, I mean, he's white.
He asked the question. I do believe that once Akainu, comes to the realization that the world government's trying to end the world, that maybe he doesn't do like a hard pivot, but he starts to like, draw that separation.
Most definitely. Yeah.
But with the help of Dragon, I think Dragon is going to be the main factor in all of this. I think Dragon's going to be the one who puts the nail in the coffin for the Marines.
Yes. And honestly, for the world at large, right? I think like Dragon being the head of the revolutionaries, it just makes a lot of sense for him to be present during the final war and to be the man at the top of all of this. I do wonder with Akainu. Akainu is one of two candidates to me that is going to fulfill a role by the end of the story that I think we haven't seen for a reason. And that is the person who eventually drowns, right? There will eventually be a villain in a story about the weakness of Devil Fruit users being the sea who drowns. And I think there's two possibilities. I think there's three, really. It could also be Blackbeard at the end. But I really think Imu and Akainu are the two big ones that I see in my head. And the other thing about Akainu that I find interesting is that Akainu's got the magma fruit, right? What happens to magma underwater? It hardens and floats to the top and becomes islands. I would love the idea of the end of the series of Akainu being beaten, his magma hardening and then building the new Marineford over his corpse would be, sick at the end of the series.
I like that.
But
God.
so I really like the idea of like him being the one to eventually die by the sea, and because of like how staunchly absolute justice he is, and literally dying and setting the foundation for the new Marines moving forward, him still being an ever-present threat. Like, I think narratively it makes a lot of cool sense. But I also think with everything that we've heard about Emu already and us not knowing how to defeat him, I do think ultimately, you know, if the villain, if the weakness of devil fruit users is the sea, I think that goes in play for the actual literal devil, or the devil fruit user, right? And that eventually the thing that would beat them would be the sea as well. And how that ties into Dragon, right? If Dragon has like the storm fruit or the hurricane fruit or something, that's ridiculous. I mean, like that would, in a way, be able to control the seas. If you're able to create storms and rain clouds and whirlpools and hurricanes, you're essentially the only devil fruit user that can utilize the sea in some type of unique fashion. So again, he's gotta have some role.
Just
to
bring
play
like a monsoon or a hurricane up there. Yeah, it's over, dude.
Man. Yeah,
knock him out.
Sure. Yeah,
yeah, dude. I'm a big See, I'm not a big Dragon fan, but I do believe in all of his potential. That's the
100%. That's exactly where I am supremely excited in the Revolutionaries and what they're going to do as a whole. But in terms of Dragon himself, I'm hyped to see him, and I've been hyped to see him for so long. But now I almost feel like it's been dragged out so much that I'm just kind of ready for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
it's like Scott
I'm hyped
Gavin,
to see
right?
what he can do.
Like
Yeah,
at some point he's gonna
to a
come
lesser
back
extent. Yeah.
So in the revs, like, you know, minus Dragon and Sambo, who do you really enjoy? Like who do you like design wise, or like who do you like air towards?
I mean, I love Karasu. I think the idea of like a soot fruit that can create giant soot crows is just cool to me. I've always liked Karasu. Even from the first time we saw Karasu, I liked him. Of the other ones, I gotta be honest, I kind of hate the designs of most of the Revolutionaries. Like, and not even like kind of hate them, like really hate them.
No,
like
same.
I think all of the, you know, they showed like the secondary and commands of all the different seas.
Yeah.
All of them, I hate. All of them.
You gotta admit. Ushiano the cow is kind of funny though.
I mean, it's funny, but like at the grand scheme of things,
though.
I'm not like, no. And even to a lesser extent, like I don't mind Morley and Lindbergh, but I'm not excited for Morley and Lindbergh. I think beyond Sabo and, Dragon, the ones I'm probably most excited about are Bello Betty and Bonnie. Because I think without a shadow of a doubt, Bonnie and Kuma go with the Revolutionaries. Like that Bonnie literally is the spitting image of her mother, who used to run one of the divisions of the Revolutionaries. The Revolutionaries' whole goal in attacking Marijoa during the Reverie was to free Kuma. So I feel like at the end of all this, with Kuma amazingly being alive at the end of Egghead, what? Like, I didn't see that happening in a million years. But him being alive, I think him and Bonnie go off with the Revolutionaries, that they leave Elbaf, go, we have other things to do, paw fruit away to Kamabaka Kingdom, and are present among the actual final war.
Yeah. Do you so do you think Kuma's gonna like get restored, or think he's actually done for the rest of the series? Because that's kind of something that's lingering in my mind.
Yeah, I am 50-50. Yeah. On one hand, I thought, it would be great for Kuma to die after saving his daughter and after having seen literally his sun god and see his daughter become the sun god. Like, there's a lot of cool narrative stuff there where Kuma can finally be at rest after everything he's been through, right? Because we all love Kuma. However, now that he is still alive and Bonnie controls the entire army of pacifistas with her authority chip and also controls all S-Bear and anything else that's in relation to Kuma, like that's the clone army, quote unquote, that the revolutionaries need to take on the world government. I've always said from the early days of the pacifistas, we're going to get an Order 66 type thing in which the pacifistas turn against the world government. Bonnie is Order 66, ultimately, right? Bonnie has control. She can do whatever she pleases. And unless the Gorosei command it, Bonnie has ultimate authority. So she can run against Marijoa with a whole army of pacifistas in tow with the revolutionaries, in tow with S-Bear, in tow with all the other technology that discovered in Egghead Island. And I also think, as much as people hate this, we saw it happen during this arc where she went Gear 5, right? Where she became the future in which she was the most free. As much as I don't want to see it,
an army of Gear 5?
I see a world in which she can make everyone free. Just as she's able to change people's ages and do all that kind of stuff, I could see a Bonnie awakening in which she is envisioning a world in which everyone is free and gives a power buff to the revolutionaries and turns them all temporarily Gear 5.
Oh,
and
God.
also,
Lindbergh Gear 5.
And the reason why I think this could totally happen is because of another character in the revolutionaries we haven't talked about, which is Bello Betty. Because the whole thing with Bello Betty's power is she cheers people on and allows them to be invigorated and have the energy to do what they need to do to rise up against their oppressors. That was literally the thing holding Bonnie down before going Gear 5 and utilizing the ability to distort the future in which she's the most free and she is Nika, right? If Bello Betty is there cheering her on, sort of like Eri in My Hero Academia, like constantly, you know, giving the healing powers to Deku, she's like a battery. Bello Betty can be the battery to Bonnie to just keep making futures in which everyone is going Gear 5. And that's, I mean, if you imagine a world in which all the revolutionary commanders, in addition to all their Devil Fruit powers, are able to utilize a temporary Gear 5 power boost, plus the entire power of the pacifistas, bro, like, that is the perfect opportunity for the revolutionaries to finally go against the world government. That's it.
I mean, what's kind of poetic about it, too, is that Bello Betty took over her mom's position too, right?
Yes.
Like it just works so well. See, I'm not a big fan of, you know, before this point, I was never a big fan of Bonnie joining the RA. I was always like, oh, like maybe she'll be like the cabin girl for the Straw Hats, because I feel like that also fits, because Roger had, you know, Buggy and Shanks, and now, you know, Luffy can have Bonnie and maybe teach her some different abilities. But I think this might be one of the better arguments I've seen for Bonnie going to the Revolutionaries. I do like the idea of Bello Betty cheering her on, and that's like her, quote, mom in this scenario.
Right. I mean, that literally is the person who took the place of her mother being the one to encourage her to be the best she can possibly be moving into Final War and actually be a huge boon and a huge power buff to not just herself and Kuma, but to the Revolutionary Army as a whole. I mean, again, it's poetic. The whole thing about the Revolutionaries is they want to see the world free. Bonnie's believed in the Sun God. Kuma's seen the Sun God. She's literally been the Sun God, and Kuma has seen the Sun God.
Yeah.
So with that inspiring them, that's like what the Revolutionary Army needs to kick into, no pun intended, fifth gear. You know?
Here, since we talked about the clone army, I gotta ask you, if you had a clone army yourself, like 1,000 clones, who would you model it off of, like in real life? Because I'd pick The Rock. I think The Rock is pretty cool. I get good old Dwayne up there.
An army of Dwayne Johnsons?
Yeah, who'd you pick?
I have to think about it for a second. Hold on, give me a sec.
No, yeah, go for it.
Who would I pick?
Do you go for like physique? Do you go for like, you know, it doesn't have to be like a, you know, a killer army.
It would be Genghis Khan. It would be a clone of Genghis Khan's.
Oh,
you'd obliterate the entire world. If you're talking in terms of power, get an army of Genghis Khans. That's it. It's like,
at first, like my earbud cut off for a second. I thought, you know, when it cut back in, I thought you said Megan the Stallion. I was like, I was like, wait, what?
No army of Megan the Stallions. No,
Megan the Stallion. She's 1,000 of
her.
No.
1,000 her. No, I think Genghis Khan would be super powerful. Yeah,
Genghis Khan.
Like some type of warlord or some type of super strong combatant. Or like, I mean, Dwayne Johnson's obviously a good one, but at the end of the day, he's an entertainer. Less so a fighter. I feel like if you wanted an actual fighter, I don't know, Ulysses S. Grant? I don't know. You get like,
just go back in time.
Like, that's what I'm saying. Like,
wait,
someone
did
like
Grant
that.
Did he throw fists back in the day?
Did he throw hands? I mean, he became president and he won the Civil War, so I feel like he's probably a good choice. I mean, current day fighters, I mean, I don't know, like 1,000 Mike Tysons would be kind of scary. I feel
that'd be scary. Yeah, like prime Mike Tyson.
Prime Mike Tyson's just
my God.
1,000 of them would be kind of crazy.
Yeah, no, but crime would be like wiped off the face of the earth.
Yeah, just
you just have like one Mike Tyson per city, just walking around, just bum, bum, bum.
Just walking around, taking everybody out. Yeah, right.
So here's an idea I've been playing with recently. But like, imagine an idealistic world where, you know, problems were settled over countries fighting each other, like, but only the presidents fight. Like, do you just imagine? Like, every country
we would lose, guaranteed.
No, but hear me out. We jack up our presidents. Like, let's say like Joe Biden or Donald Trump, right? Like, imagine like
they're in their 80s. It's not going to happen. We're getting wiped. We're getting wiped by like, I have to look up a list of world leaders, but I feel like some dude in his 40s in his prime that's out there somewhere is wiping them. That's it. Like, not even.
That's fair.
If it's just 1-to-1, They're getting wiped.
But just
All
imagine
old
the
men,
augmentations
gone.
that like Biden or like, you know, Trump
The
could have.
augmentations?
Yeah, it'd be like
Biden and Trump
Cyberpunk.
put together like cybernetic enhancements.
Yeah.
Nah, bro.
Yeah, that'd be so crazy. I don't know why. I was just
That'd
like,
be
man, it'd be
wild.
so much simpler, right? 'Cause, like, instead of going to war and like sacrificing all these people, it's like, hey, like me and you, 1v1. You know, meet me in the
There you go.
gulag.
Meet me in the gulag.
Yeah. So, you know, speaking of the
Yeah.
gulag, though, Sengoku
Okay,
and Sudo.
interesting segue there.
Yeah. Garp is in the gulag right now.
Yes,
Blackbeard
yes.
has Garp. And Sengoku and Sudo, right? Like, we don't know where they're going. Last we saw, they were talking about Cross Guild, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, by the way, Garp went to Hachinosu. And then they're like, wait, what? And then we cut over during the Vegapunk broadcast, and they're on a ship. Where do you think
Yeah.
they're going? Are they going to confront Cross Guild, Blackbeard, or some mystery third option we don't know of yet?
Dude, that's such a good question. I feel like Kuzan, to me, is the biggest wild card moving into the end of the story.
Yeah.
I don't know what the hell is happening with Kuzan and Garp. I will say I don't think Garp is dead, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think Ice Time Capsule, same type of thing, like Saul. I do think end of series Garp dies, like sacrificing himself in some final attack or something, but I don't think he's dead. And as for where Garp and Kuzan and the rest of them are going, I mean, you brought up the idea of like Blackbeard going to Wano. I could maybe see that type of detour of like maybe trying to get Pluton and Wano Country coming face to face with Yamato. I don't know. Do you have any? Because I'm really kind of at a loss when it comes to them.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to like Sengoku and Sudo, like,
And
you know,
Sengoku in particular, I have no idea what he's going to be doing. Yeah.
Like, I'd like to imagine, because him and Garp have been around for so long, and even Sudo, right? Like, dude, we
Yeah.
saw, like, in Film Z, like, they were the boys back in the day. Like,
Of course.
They were always together. So I like to imagine they would slide through for Garp, and they would go over there, try to rescue him. But, you know, that would mean fighting Kuzan, and that we saw how hard that
Right.
was for Garp. So, like, would Sengoku and Sudo be held up in the same way? Or since they didn't have, like, that good of a connection with them, would they be able to take him down?
Yeah.
Like, I think
don't
that's the
know.
main question here. And I feel like no matter what happens, I just can't imagine, no matter where they go, like whether it's to Cross Guild or Blackbeard, I just can't imagine Sengoku and Sudo winning. Because, you know, Cross
Yeah.
Guild's still going to be prominent by the end. Blackbeard's still going to be
course.
prominent. So, like, Sengoku and Sudo, like, I don't want them to be characters that come in and just die. So I'm kind of
No.
afraid for them.
Yeah, I mean, I do think, again, they have a high likelihood of dying during Final War. I think that's kind of the beauty of One Piece, right? Is
Yeah.
that with the end of the pre-time skip, the death of Whitebeard and Ace, right? When you're nearing the end, I think Oda is not usually necessarily, like, scared about killing off people. I mean, you've
Yeah.
even seen this in Egghead, right? With, like, the Stella Vegapunk finally dying, and, like, with Saturn dying in the most recent chapter. Like, he's definitely willing to kill people, but I think he's only willing to kill people once he knows narratively they're done. And so I feel like a lot of these big major deaths of the old guard is going to be during Final War. Yeah. I think the other big wild card too, amidst the Sengoku Suru group, is still Kong. Like, who is Kong?
Hey.
What is Kong? Like, what
I
what
try
has
to
he
forget
done?
he exists.
Is he going to do anything? Yeah.
I mean, Kong is such a weird one, right? Because he
Yeah.
is the Supreme Commander, but he also, like, lives in the Red Line. Like that's where his office
Right.
is at, right? Like, that we
Right.
last saw that. Like, oh, here's the Red Line, and here's Kong. It's like, what the hell's going on with this guy? Like, where is...
I
Like,
do-
technically, he should be, like, near Marie's Raw right now. But he's,
Right,
like, done
right.
anything.
I do love the idea of him having some type of kaiju fruit, though, of like being literally King Kong would be sick. Like,
Oh,
him
that'd be awesome.
just having this giant, like, King Kong kaiju giant monkey fruit that's just like obliterating everybody, I think would be super cool to have like a King Kong running around during Final War.
Hey,
But
think that fits.
I really have no idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Sengoku and Sudo, like, they got some crazy abilities, too. Like, the Buddha fruit, come
Right,
on.
the Buddha
like, the
fruit is
shockwave, man.
insane. Yeah. Yeah, do you think we're gonna see the Jesus Know Me at some point by the
The
end of the
Jesus,
series? I think
Jesus
that'd be
Know
fire.
Me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think so. I feel like
Coming back
Usopp
from the
kinda
dead,
did it in
having
a
like
way.
a thorny crown and whipping people around with it, and like would be kind of
That'd be
sick.
crazy,
Having
yes.
a giant cross on your back like Mihawk, and then just like that'd be wild, man. The Jesus
would be
fruit
wild.
sick. Yeah.
Yeah, and then like you touch some water and like you have like a little domain expansion where it all
to
turns
wine.
red,
Bro,
turns like
would
into
be
wine.
sick. Please,
Yeah.
man.
You know, when I think about
Hito no
Logia
Me mythical
Awakenings,
model Jesus would be fire, dude.
I just
Yeah.
think of domain expansions. Like, imagine
you
Enel, like,
go.
hey, I'm awakening, and then all of a sudden, like, you know, lightning surrounds them, like they're like in hyperspace or something. Yeah, just get wacky with it, man. We're in the
be
final
awesome,
saga,
yeah.
right? Just throw all
Exactly.
the ideas to the wall. Why not?
Exactly. And I do feel like the interesting thing about where we are now is like you know, 10 years ago on YouTube, I know you're part of the new generation, right? But like, back in the old day, right? Theories were, I feel like, everything. And I feel like theory crafting has sort of waned. Not that theory videos don't still do well, but I do feel like the hold that theories had on YouTube as a whole, like 10 years ago, is way different from what it is right now. And I think a big reason for that is because like theories back in the day, it was a lot more open-ended, right? We had a lot of story arcs still to go. We didn't really know like what the major story beats moving forward would be. And I think now, like legitimately, most people have figured out most story threads. Like I do feel like eventually by the end of One Piece, the majority of big things that have happened will have been theorized by people who have made YouTube videos. I truly genuinely believe that. I think someone out there has pretty much discovered the One Piece or talked about the One Piece. Even if it's like 1,000 sub YouTuber, nobody's watched the video, it's out there. So many people have theorized, somebody's done it. So with that being said, I think like the idea of theorizing story beats is no longer as fun or interesting to me as a creator anymore. Whereas like theorizing matchups and theorizing abilities and like things yet to come is a lot more fascinating to me because again, that's the stuff that like we don't really see the writing on the wall. I think a lot of the big story beats like the death of Shanks, Blackbeard being the final opponent, probably stealing Imu's power, Imu being taken down at the same time as all the Goros. Like there's just a lot of things that have to happen narratively, like Sabo and Akainu, that being a clash that happens. There's a lot of stuff that we know needs to happen. Zoro and Mihawk. So it's a matter of filling in the blanks as opposed to figuring out where we're going. Because again, where we're going is clear as day now. Elbaf, Final War, Laugh Tale. We are in the final saga. That's what we've got. And maybe there'll be like little things in the interim. Maybe we'll get like a little God Valley flashback mini arc. Maybe we'll get like a little Roadstar excursion with or Lodestar or whatever you want to call it, right? With like Cross Guild or with Blackbeard or something. But I think for the most part, the three major arcs are set in place now. We are here.
Yeah,
we are in the final saga. And we've already, if you look at Egghead already, how long this arc has been, moving forward with everything else that we have put in play, I think for so long, us as One Piece content creators or even readers of One Piece have been theorizing like, when is this arc gonna happen? When's this thing gonna happen? Now we're at a point with Final War where all of this is gonna happen at the same time. Like imagine that peak bit of Egghead towards the ending where it was just like reveal after reveal after reveal and everyone's attacking everyone. It's gonna be that every chapter the second we enter Final War. Like it's literally going to be that for years of the story because you know Final War is gonna at least last a year. You know Laugh Tale's gonna at least last a year minimum for both of those. So we've got a lot of good stuff coming.
Yeah, I mean, and then with like you said, you know, every now and then people will say, oh, like, you know, if Oda sees that somebody's predicting the story, he'll change it, right? Like, that's been a thing that Oda said a long, long time ago, but that was a long time ago. Now, in that final saga, like, Oda doesn't really have the ability to change certain aspects anymore, right? Because like you said, like, we're progressing. Like, we know what has to happen. It's just a matter of how or, like, when.
Exactly. I think it's more of a matter of, like, how that he might change if people predicted it, and not necessarily when or what. Because the what is discovering the One Piece. The what is taking down the world government, right? That we know this has to happen narratively for the story. So again, it's how we get to that point, which I think is the more interesting discussion.
As far as the One Piece goes, for Laugh Tale, when we get there, when we find that treasure, what are you expecting to find there?
A bottle of sake. Addressed to the sun god.
Big sake?
Literally, that's what it is. Yeah. I've come to terms with that is what I believe the One Piece is that there is something key and meant for Luffy, right? Meant for the sun god or the next Joy Boy or whatever, right? That was meant for them and only them. And that you have the world's greatest party and that Luffy and all his allies after Blackbeard's been taken down and Imu's been taken down and everybody's free and Luffy's the pirate king and people can live freely as they want. Luffy's dream even, right? Like, I think people have differing ideas of what Luffy's dream could be, but I do think it's probably going to be something similar to, because it's childish, right? We know it's something childish that was similar to something Roger wanted. And I could see something similar to the fact of like, well, I want everyone to be a pirate because what is a pirate in Luffy's mind? It means you're free. And so if Luffy has a childish dream to the extent of like, well, I want everyone to be the pirate and I'm the pirate king, right? So I'm at the apex of all of it. that still goes in line with his dream that we've known throughout the course of the series, and also that weird thing that like made people laugh, or something along the lines of like, I just want to throw the biggest party the world has ever seen or something.
Yeah.
And how do you do it? You crack open Bink sake, pop open that bottle of champagne, and there we go. Move into the final, the final epilogue party and everybody's dreams being fulfilled, and us seeing the epilogue of all their dreams to the tune of Bink sake, which then will make more sense knowing what we know about the lore of the sun god and the final war and all that stuff moving to the end. So, and you bring about the new dawn, right? You party until sundown, and that's it.
That sake, man, it's got to taste gnarly. 800 years of aging
awesome.
at least.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
It's going to be amazing. It's going to get everyone super drunk. Yeah.
I think what would be really funny is if like they open the bottle of sake and it's empty. Like that could be like
That'd
the
be
laugh
awesome
of
too.
Laughtail.
And that's why they left, right? It's an
Joy
empty.
Boy.
It could, yeah, right. It's been there for so long that literally it dried up in the sun and there's nothing in the bottle anymore. And then that's Roger got there and just left. That's it.
Yeah, he's like, oh, Joy Boy's a funny guy, or like maybe Joy Boy says, hey, sorry, I drank all of it.
There you go.
I had to do it.
Go.
And then that's when Roger's like, I wish I met that guy. It sounds like a hoot.
Exactly.
Oh, man.
And that's a big reason too why I think like the idea of all the fights and everything finalizing in Laugh Tale is so important, and like the discovery of the actual One Piece and Buggy getting to it and then not being interested in what it is because it's not meant for him. It's meant for Luffy, right? So I feel like there's just narratively a lot of stuff that makes sense for all of it to be there. And then also, again, like the Yonko all being present, the living Yonko being present at Laugh Tale is also important because then you've got pretty much all the major characters there. You've then got enough opportunity for the rest of the world to find out about it via Morgan's reporting in the sky or whatever. And yeah, there you go. I mean, that's the end of the story. But I do feel like we've been seeing this a lot recently with a lot of shonen fumbling the bag towards the ending, JJK, MHA. So I feel like I am not really concerned with One Piece. I feel like One Piece, because he's known what it is for so long and he's so excited to draw it, that I feel like whatever the end is going to be is something that he's had in mind since well before any of us even knew about Gear 2,
Yeah,
So,
I mean, and with certain authors, they say that they're being rushed or like they don't have enough chapters.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
feel like Shueisha would limit Oda when it comes to this. No. When it comes to like One Piece, they're like, hey, you know what? Take all the time you want. You want to go for like another 10 chapters?
I do think though he is self-limiting. You can see it in the way he's writing certain things and talking about certain things. Again, having been around for so long, like doing 10 years of videos on this topic, I feel like I've seen so many of the editor quotes saying, One Piece is 70% done. We've got 4 more years left. We got 5 more years left. I genuinely believe in his heart of hearts that when Wano ended and Oda said, I think we have 5 years left, I think he believed it. Because what year was that? 2022. What does that take us to 5 years later? 2027. What is 2027? The 30th anniversary of One Piece. Yeah. So to me, in his brain, I think he wants to make it 30 years. I think he wants to get to that 30-year mark, and he's probably going to go over it, realistically, right? With every,
he said that too.
Yeah, he's going to go over 2027. But I do think, on the actual 30th anniversary of One Piece, the One Piece manga, I do think Shueisha's already got plans for it. I do think in his mind, he knows what he wants to happen narratively during that 30th anniversary chapter. And I also think in terms of how you see things spaced out with One Piece, right? And how quickly we're getting so many things resolved. I don't think any of us expected going into Egghead that every Elder Star would be there and that it would end with the death of an Elder Star. That's crazy. That's endgame level stuff that proves to us that we're actually in the final saga, which is why I think 2024 going into 2025, we've got Elbaf, right? 2025, 2026, 2026, 2027, you got Final War, and then that final 2027 to 2028 Laugh Tale epilogue, 1 year long finale where everything's been solved by that point. So it's just fights. It's people achieving their dreams. It doesn't have to take very long. You're not going to need a 100 chapter arc for something that's resolving everything that's been set up, because the setup for that arc has been 25, 30 years in the making. So I think people are thinking of that final arc like it needs to be super long. It doesn't need to be. I think Final War and Elbaf will be. I think Elbaf is his last opportunity to have a playground of adventure and fun. But again, Final War and Laugh Tale, there's no need for the setup because the setup for that arc has been the rest of the series. So I think those arcs are going to be shorter than people are expecting. And again, narratively and marketing wise and everything, like looking at this from the business perspective of Shueisha, they're for sure going to make it to the 30-year mark. They're definitely going to 2027. I think you also look at the number of volumes that are released. We had the first 60 volumes pre-time skip. We're probably going to get to 120 for the second 60, right? And that 120 will probably be the climax of whatever happens in the story. And that moving forward, you know, if we get 121, 122, whatever, like the additional few past that 60 chapter mark or the 60 volume mark, that'll probably be Laugh Tale and Epilogue. I mean, that's it. That's all we need. We are at the end. So people who are like, oh, we're going to go another 10 years. I'm like, bro, we're not. Like, it's not happening. And there's no amount of Oda going on breaks and dragging this out any longer. It's not. He has that vision in his mind. He's going to make it to 30 years and he's steamrolling to the end. If Egghead was any indication for what's moving forward in the story, like Elbaf, Final War, Laugh Tale are going to resolve so many plot threads and so many things are going to come together in ways that you and I and a lot of our viewers can't even comprehend, right? Because Oda's been planning this out for so many years.
Oh yeah, and with Oda too, like, man, I kind of feel bad for him sometimes because, you know, when he makes these predictions saying, hey, you know, 5 years left, you know, 70% done, I bet he looks at it and he smiles a little bit because this guy, dude, he's like, have you watched Teen Titans?
100%. Yeah,
dude, he's like Brushogun. Like, they got this guy chained up in the basement, you know, like, he's like bleeding
drawing everything out.
Yeah, he's just drawing, like, stop me. Stop. Like, I want to go home. Like, I remember there was one.
And I do think that's a good thing you bring up, right? Is I think, not that Oda's done with One Piece, right? Not that Oda's, like, over it, right? Because it's that Oda is now at the point that he can finally draw what he's been waiting to draw. He said this for so long. Even at the end of Wano, right? He was like, God, I've been waiting for that moment for so long. So finally getting to Gear 5 and finally having that moment against Kaido, like, he's been waiting for it. He got to draw it. And so now everything else, all these final arcs, they're just fallout. This is the climax. We're at the climax of the story. We're in the final saga. And the final saga is already longer with just Egghead than every other saga for the most part throughout the course of the story. Save for, I think, Wano, Water 7. I think there's like one other one. But I think it's already longer than most of the other sagas, is it not? Just with Egghead alone? Yeah.
I mean, with Oda too, like, he's talked about how, you know, he wants to enjoy life. You know, he wants to hang out with his family more. I remember there was one interview, or SBS specifically, where he said that when he goes outside, sometimes he tears up a little bit when he sees families playing in the park because he can't do that. And it's like, yeah, like, you know, Oda, you know, he's blessed with the great manga. You know, he's got like such a fantastic series on his hand, but at the same time, it's a curse because he's like so stuck to it. Like, he can't go anywhere. Like, he has all this wealth, but like, what does it mean if you can't really, you know, enjoy it?
Exactly.
Which is why, like, Oda will take these breaks and, like, you know, have fun with the live action.
100%. And I feel like that's the other thing, too, is, like, with the live action, with the One Piece, right? Being, like, the new, essentially, Brotherhood or Kai or whatever you want to call it for One Piece. That's actually going to be, like, the definitive anime experience. Plus the anime ending. Like, there's still going to be, once One Piece ends, whether it's 2027, 2028, like, it'll be around then. But whether it's, like, exactly then, who knows? But I do feel like even after that manga ends, we've still got another full year of the original anime. We've still got the One Piece, which is going to still be catching up. Probably isn't even going to hit Wano by the time One Piece ends, right? We're also going to have the live action still ongoing too. There's like so much stuff happening with it that I feel like there will still be One Piece content for years and years to come. He's set. And he doesn't necessarily need to be involved with any of it because he's made so much material that you could just build upon that for years and years and years.
Ooh, here's a good one. Here's two questions. So one, do you think One Piece should get a sequel afterwards? Not with Oda, but like, you know, his assistants, editors, or somebody else doing a two-piece, or no? You think
no,
end it there?
I want a prequel. I want a prequel.
Oh, okay. Prequel. Yeah. That's even better. I like that. You know, go to the Roger era.
Nothing to do with the sequel. Yes.
Roger I feel era, like a Joy Boy era, manga, all that.
Yes, 100%. That's because I think that's stuff that people want fleshed out that I don't think is really going to be fleshed out that much in the actual story of One Piece. I think obviously we're going to know the full story of Joy Boy. We're going to see him beyond the silhouette. We're going to know what happened during the Void Century. We're going to figure out all that stuff, right? But I think to the amount that I think people are expecting that we're going to get for it, I don't think we're going to get it. And I think that is like ample opportunity for a prequel manga that could be based off of what Oda set in motion, right? Because at that point, the canon is put in place by Oda for how the series ends. So there's no need to debate canon of like, is this thing canon? Is it not canon? Whatever. Because if we get to the end of the One Piece and then a prequel happens, a prequel series, the prequel can only change so much because of what's already been set in motion for the canon. So there's no need for a debate of canon because it's going to already be put in place. And they can do whatever they want to do with Roger. And then they can have fun fleshing things out that we never got fleshed out. That could technically be canon, but it won't really matter one way or the other because we've already had the finale of One Piece.
Yeah, and I even like a story where, like, you know, it goes back 200 or 300 years, some weird timeline where we meet characters that we don't even know about yet. You know, like we've never heard of. And they just exist within, like, the middle of One Piece, where, like, Void Century, you got One Piece here, and then you have this new story where, like, we could visit islands that we've seen in Luffy's journey, and we revisit them, like, in the past. I think that'd be really cool. And
I do not see any realm in which we get a Boruto situation for One Piece. I don't see any world in which Luffy's kid becomes the future pirate king and goes after another like it's just not gonna
that'd be crazy.
Knowing the story as it is and knowing like how little Oda cares about shipping and all that kind of stuff, like it's just not that kind of series. We're not getting like a Boruto type.
We're not getting like a Doofy coming out here and, you know, I'm gonna go find the two-piece.
Yeah, right.
It'd be crazy. So second question, I know you're a gamer, you know, we play a lot of games here, but of course, One Piece video game, man, are you looking forward to like some future game? Because let me tell you, One Piece, they haven't had the best run in comparison to like other series. Like, are you looking forward to like a One Piece video game? And if so, like, what is your dream game for One Piece?
I mean, here's the thing with One Piece. I thought Odyssey was fun. It's a fun Dragon Quest kind of clone, fun turn-based game. But it's not like the best RPG ever made. And you look at something like Burning Blood. Burning Blood was a blast. I think Burning Blood genuinely is like one of my favorite arena fighters that's ever been made. I'm not a huge arena fighter person. I much prefer the 2D kind of like Dragon Ball Fighters type thing. But I did enjoy Burning Blood for what it was. And I also think the fun little spin-off games like the Game Boy Going Baseball game with all the One Piece characters decked out in baseball gear, or like the Power Stone clone that was on GameCube was really fun too. I mean, I think I have sort of given up hope that we're ever going to get like a really, really good 10 out of 10 One Piece game. I think I just kind of want a One Piece Fighters, right? Something along the lines of a 2D, hand-drawn, amazing roster, balls to the wall, crazy fighting game would be great. That's actually like competitive that we would see at EVO. I think would be like my dream. That's my, because I love FGC. I love Nintendo. I love all this kind of stuff. People who follow me know like gaming content is as big for me as the One Piece content is. So I think, you know, that ideal of having some type of One Piece game that I could make content off of for years would be awesome. And also I would just love to see it. I think like, man, a One Piece 2D fighting game would be sick. But I also think I would love to see some type of Wind Waker-esque sailing on a boat, going across like this massive map and going to the different islands in whatever order you want to go in would be really fun as well. But I don't know. I don't really want it. You know, I think there's other dream games I want before that. Give me Chrono Trigger 2 or Chrono Trigger 2D HD or give me, you know, Earthbound remake or give me, there's like tons of other games that I want to see first. But I do think high on the list is One Piece fighting game developed by Arc System Works. That's what I want.
That is a dream come true. And I follow Arc System as well. And they talked about getting the One Piece IP and like doing this. And they said that, they would love to, but they have so many other projects. And obviously, you know, Bandai hasn't like reached out to them. But I think the One Piece Fighters game would go so well for the community because, like you said,
sell
like,
incredibly well.
EVO, like people underestimate how important it is to have a game that's competitive because that's longevity right there.
100%.
And I'm all for it. You speak my language, and it's crazy because like I have so many of the same opinions as you, and I can't tell if that's because I watch your content, you know, back in the day, or
I brainwashed you. You watched me back in the day, and then you made your own videos, and you're like, oh, I'm just
like I'm like mini Roger now. It's like what the hell's going on? But hey, thank you, Roger, for joining us, man. I really appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time out of your day.
This was a pleasure. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to see the video.
Man. Yeah, hey, thank you guys for watching as well. You guys already know who this guy is, you know, but I'll still link him down below.
You say that. I don't think so. I've fallen off, as people say. I'm not like, I do a lot of One Piece content, but I do feel like because I do the official, I'm somebody who is sort of like outside of the fandom in a weird way. Like, obviously, we're all friends and like we have our Memory DM group and like everybody knows everybody. But I do feel like I am sort of in a weird little like side area.
You're like the Roger Whitebeard era,
right.
But you successfully like pivoted though, so it's really respectable too.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Of course,
appreciate
man.
it.
But hey, like I said, thank you again, and thank you guys for watching, and we will catch you guys in the future if we ever have the chance to do this again. Thank
Absolutely.
you, and have a great night.
Nakama!
All right, perfect.
Great. All right, man. And